in his last year at high school, got his GCSEs coming up, and I don't really hear much discussion about that. I think we're from the north of England, and we've because if you take my son's example, he's missed 6 weeks of school since September. It's a crucial time after already missing probably 6 months of schooling prior to that. There doesn't seem to have been that many changes to the exam systems or to the syllabuses. So there's no way that they will be able to sit in a fair and level playing field, particularly if you're comparing to other children in the country that haven't missed any school since September. So that's why, because there's no parity, I think a bigger discussion needs to be had about it.
And you can see this obviously from the other side, being a teacher.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, I'm actually head teacher of the primary school, but I'm also CEO of the MAT. So we have 2 secondary schools within that. So I see the frustrations of schools. I see head teachers contract tracing through the holidays and over weekends. But it's just a frustration within the system that one case then leads to a shutdown or 30 pupils coming home. So in my personal school at the moment, in the primary school, we've got 97 pupils at home last week and this. And it's just
out of how many?
97 out of 350.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we had 1 week in since September when we've had everybody back. So one case triggers the fact that we have to send at least 30 children home and normally 2 members of staff. But we had 7 cases in our school last week, which meant we sent 97 children home and 6 members of staff.
Goodness. I'll see what we can do about this in terms of having more of a discussion, as you say, in terms of our programme tomorrow. We've got our MPs on. I'll raise it with them. Mark, thank you very much for speaking to me today. And to all of you. Keep it with us on 5 Live. Nahal's next.
Emma, thank you. Coming up, we're going to be talking about virtual gigs. So, would you be comfortable in the future as life returns to normal, watching a live band on a screen and paying for that rather than going and seeing them actually live?
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 1 o'clock. This is Justine Green. Ministers try to minimise the political damage caused by Boris Johnson's description of devolution in Scotland as a disaster. Jeremy Corbyn has acknowledged that anti-Semitism concerns were not exaggerated as Labour chiefs consider whether to lift his suspension from the party. And the royal rumpus over made-up scenes in The Crown. Senior Conservatives have been trying to diffuse a row concerning Boris Johnson's reported description of devolution in Scotland as a disaster and Tony Blair's biggest mistake. The Communities Secretary Robert Jenrick said the Prime Minister had always supported devolution and was referring to the rise of the SNP in Scotland rather than the policy itself. But BBC Scotland's chief political correspondent Glenn Campbell told Jeremy why Mr Johnson's words were so damaging.
Independence, with Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, and others seizing on these remarks and saying that it exposes the Conservatives and their lack of support for devolution. The Tories have spent the last 20 plus years trying to overcome their anti-devolution past, and they've got to a position now where they are the main party of opposition in the Scottish Parliament, with those Holyrood elections 6 months away. But the last thing they need is an intervention of this sort from Boris Johnson.
The government says it won't be able to decide until the end of the month what restrictions will be put in place in England once the current lockdown ends on the 2nd of December. The plan is to return to a tiered system, but ministers have confirmed the details were being reviewed and it was possible tougher measures could be included in the tier structure. New figures show there have been almost 71,000 excess deaths in the UK in the months since the coronavirus pandemic began. Excess deaths are the difference between those seen this year and the normal 5-year average. The Office for National Statistics said most of the deaths occurred during the first wave. Members of Labour's ruling National Executive will meet this afternoon to consider Jeremy Corbyn's suspension from the party. In response to last month's report on anti-Semitism, Mr Corbyn suggested that the scale of the problem had been overstated. Our political correspondent Ian Watson reports.
Jeremy Corbyn has published on Facebook a statement which he had already submitted to Labour's headquarters following his suspension. He makes clear that concerns about anti-Semitism are neither exaggerated nor overstated, and he'd not intended to belittle those concerns. He insists that he was simply making the point that the vast majority of Labour members are deeply opposed to anti-Semitism. Some of his colleagues on his party's left felt he should go further and apologise for his remarks, while others were pressing for him to be reinstated unconditionally. Those close to Mr Corbyn are hopeful that his clarification will enable him to be readmitted to party membership.
£5 million worth of Apple products have been stolen from a lorry on a motorway in Northamptonshire. The driver and a security guard were tied up, as Victoria Bourne reports.
The lorry was transporting £5 million worth of goods when it was intercepted on the southbound slip road to the M1 a week ago. The vehicle, with the driver and security guard tied up on board, was driven to an industrial estate in Crick, where the trailer was transferred to a waiting lorry. The man and woman were left behind as an estimated 48 pallets of Apple products were taken around 9 miles to Lutterworth, where they were then loaded onto another vehicle. No arrests have been made.
The creator of the Netflix drama The Crown has defended scenes involving the Prince of Wales which were made up. Peter Morgan says he's sure the depictions ring true. It's Nikki Cardwell.
The producers of The Crown have always insisted that even though many scenes are imagined, they fairly represent what happened at the time. But one aspect of Series 4 is proving particularly contentious.
Your duty now was the choice of a woman the people will love as a princess.
Charles Dance as Lord Mountbatten is seen writing Prince Charles a letter, criticising him for pursuing a then-married Camilla Parker Bowles. But that letter does not exist. Former BBC Royal correspondent Jenny Bond.
The difficulty is knowing which is the truth and which isn't. And I think particularly for the younger generation who are watching, who haven't lived through those times, they're going to see this as a documentary.
Criticism of The Crown has often focused on its portrayal of made-up events. Producers maintain that the series is a drama. They have the right to use creative freedom.
Nikki Cardwell reporting there. In the city a short time ago, the 100 share index was down 82 points at 6,339. And the weather, much of the UK will have a generally cloudy and breezy afternoon, but it will be mild. Parts of western and northwest Scotland will have further heavy rain, and top temperatures of 14 Celsius in London, Edinburgh and Belfast, and 13 in Cardiff. That's the BBC News at 1:05.
All right, give me a seat.
Anticipation like this.
Welcome, everyone.
I've been so looking forward to this.
Has been decades in the making.
Thank you, Radio 2, for having me.
In Concert 50.
Celebrating 50 years with 50 live performances from the 70s to today. Bon Jovi, Annie Lennox, Radiohead, Paul Weller, Take That, Ed Sheeran, and more.
Yeah, I think you're representing every era.
BBC Radio 2's In Concert 50.
Download the BBC Sounds app to discover the full lineup.
Across the UK.
This is BBC 5 Live. Nahal Arthur-Nayaka.
Good afternoon, welcome to the show. It is a Tuesday. My big guest after 2 o'clock is the Trainspotting author Irvine Welsh. Now, so often we talk about people being a force of nature. He is all the seasons rolled into one. He's got a new book coming out. He is one of 3 authors in the Seal Club. There are novellas, and his one brings back Francis Begbie. And if you've seen Trainspotting, you know what I'm talking about. After 3, we have Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones on the programme too. Nikolai Coster-Waldau is his real name. He's been telling me about his latest film, The Silencing, which is a really good, low-budget thriller set in the American wilderness. It stars him as an animal tracker whose daughter has been kidnapped. And here is Nikolai desperately reversing out of an answer when I asked him if there was going to be a Game of Thrones prequel.
I think so. I've heard there will be, yes. I think there is.
And you? And your involvement?
Well, I've auditioned for everything in it, but I mean, I still haven't got a recall, but I'm trying.
That cannot be true. Why would you have to audition for a show you were in 8 seasons of and were one of the biggest stars of?
It's not true, obviously, but I thought it was a
What are you going to do in it? Are you going to do anything in it?
No. I don't know anything about it, to be honest. I think it's. I have no idea. I think it's about. I don't know.
He's so cool. And now we've cut this out of the interview because people more important than me felt that it shouldn't be in. Pochettino and Mourinho, and we had all this, and that's not part of the interview, but I just thought it was fascinating that Jamie Lannister is a huge Leeds fan. So there you go. If you're a Leeds fan listening to 5 Live now, you can count him as one of your celebrity fans. And he's not a fair weather one. He's not like, poor old David Cameron who got West Ham and Aston Villa mixed up. This is a guy who is, I believe, something to do with the Leeds Supporters Trust. I mean, he really does love Leeds. So, we'll be finding out more from Nikolai Coster-Waldau, aka Jamie Lannister, from Game of Thrones later on in the show. That's after 3. But first, we wanted to talk about live gigs. Now, what was the last live gig you went to? 85058 is the text number. And what did it feel like? Now, I know I'm just asking you to essentially write an essay about what it felt like to be there. Because since lockdown, artists have had to find other ways of getting their music out to their fans in more interactive ways than just dropping a lyric video or dropping a video. Actually doing live gigs on their own, in a venue, surrounded by cameras, and that happening in your living room, and you paying for that privilege. I'd like to know how you feel about that, and whether you're comfortable with the idea that that may be the way you access live music in the future. Because it's quite often with big bands, and we're about to speak to lead singers of 2 big bands in a moment, they sell out in minutes, so you can't go. But also as well, perhaps you go to 1 or 2 gigs a year. You have to sort out childcare. It's a work night, so you usually half asleep on the sofa by 9:30, which is about the time the band's coming on. So you got to be up really late. Whereas, of course, then you have to leave the venue and get home, and that's always a nightmare, isn't it? Let's be honest. You may have had a few, so you're going to be hungover than one's idea of how to spend a great and productive week. So there's lots going on in here, right? So can you see your future of attending gigs as being something more on a screen in front of you than actually being there at the venue with your shoes stuck to the floor? Well, in a minute, we're going to be speaking to Tom Ogden from Blossoms and also Chris Difford, lead singer of Squeeze. Both bands are putting on virtual gigs. Now, here's what the former Labour deputy leader, now chair of UK Music, Tom Watson, said to me yesterday about the challenge the music business faces in recovering from the paralysis caused by pandemic restrictions.
We are trying to do everything we can to save the sector because the UK commercial music sector makes many billions of pounds a year. In good times, it's a net contributor to the exchequer, so it pays for our schools and hospitals. And we need to work in partnership with the government to get back to surplus so that we can pay our way and be the best we are in the world.
So, just tell me, on the text, what is the last live gig you went to? I went to see Example, Manchester Academy. I think that might have been the last live gig I went to. And it was brilliant, and he was brilliant. And the crowd was extraordinary. That Manchester, hands in the air, raving crowd was just superb. What was yours? How much have you missed it? And can you see yourself perhaps veering more towards sitting in your living room with a screen, being there, a live experience, but a different way of doing it, and paying £10 for that privilege, rather than going and being there? It's interesting. Has the pandemic turbocharged such ideas, whereas before that was an add-on? But now will it be an integral part of what a band does? Well, now, let's speak to Tom Ogden, who is, of course, the lead singer of Blossoms. And we also have, as I said, Chris Difford, lead singer of Squeeze, with us as well. Tom and Chris, very warm welcome to 5 Live. Tom, how has it been for you as a band who revels in playing live. I once bumped into you at the airport. I think you're just coming back from Mexico, having done a festival out there. I mean, you love being on stage, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. It's like, it's become all we've known for the last probably 7 years. So obviously March, when it like kicked in and all the gigs stopped, we were in the middle of a tour, so it was like a shock to the system, really. It was, very, very strange.
And how do you feel about the fact that you're now distanced from your fans in this way? That you can't see them singing the lyrics back to you?
It's just, it's heartbreaking, really, because it's something that you take for granted, I suppose. In this time, I've had time to reflect, and when they eventually do get back the gigs, I think I'll never look at it the same. I'll always have I'll look at it from a different light now, and I'll never take anything for granted. So I think, playing live, you can't recreate it no matter how many ideas you come up with, and being in the room and having the music that loud and the sweat and everything, like, that's something you can't recreate. So, like you said, the people singing the songs back, that's probably the best feeling of being, a songwriter and being in a band. Like, when they're singing back, that's the best.
You've produced, you've announced a virtual gig for next month, Tom. What made you want to do that, you and the boys?
Well, I think obviously people who work in the industry have obviously been trying to, obviously when it's, to do it was a no-brainer, and because we've not played for so long, it's being on a stage and playing, like, there'll still be a real buzz that we can't get from just being in the rehearsal room, for sure. But again, it's still a little bit bittersweet because people aren't really there.
It's been produced by Melody VR. So Tom, what are they bringing to the experience that's different than just kind of looking at effectively a televised gig?
So they've got like 360 cameras on like different parts of the stage, which you can then, if you've got the app, you can like turn and look. Basically, it's kind of like being there, and you can turn and look at whichever band member you want. Look at the ceiling if you don't want to look at any of us. You've got full control over where you look in the room, I think, and it's quite immersive rather than one camera, so to speak.
Do you think, Tom, that this is the future, not to replace the live shows, but whenever you do a live show, your fans can also have this as an option, which wasn't the case before?
No, when I heard you saying it then, when I was like waiting to come on, I did think, what, maybe not every gig, but like the big ones, say when we play the Manchester Arena, or... I mean, that sells out in minutes, right?
Yeah. So there are thousands of people that can't see you.
Yeah, and it's such a, it's a show you would want to see if you were in, I don't know, Mexico somewhere. You wouldn't really be that bothered about maybe a smaller show. I mean, you would if you were a hardcore fan, but I mean, you're gonna want to see like the big venues and the extravagance of the show, because you can put on a bigger show in them kind of venues. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if going forward more shows were also streamed for people who, like you said, didn't get a ticket or are in other parts of the world. I could definitely see it moving forward, because I think there was when we were on tour, someone was going to do an audio streamed gig from one of the live shows as we were playing. So that's another step, just putting some cameras in there, isn't it? So you can have the whole thing.
Also, as well, with this Melody VR experience, Tom, me sitting at home watching it, or someone sitting in Mexico or in Spain or in India or Sri Lanka, wherever, they will get a view that someone in the 20th row is not going to get.
No, for sure, yeah. I think it's pretty much like being on stage in a way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yeah, you're definitely going to get something you won't get if you were sat in the gods. Whether I would, you wouldn't want it to replace live music altogether, because, like I said before, I don't think you can recreate that in anything. But, in these strange times, you've got to adapt and go with what seems to be the best experience for the people watching, the fans. And this seems to be working well. I've seen other people do it, and it seems to get a good reaction. So you can only adapt and try things, can't you?
How much, Tom, are you powered by the people in front of you? How much energy do you take from them to contribute towards how you perform?
I think, definitely a large proportion of it can be, if you've got a flat crowd, your performance, got to find...
You don't have flat crowds, Tom.
No, but say,
for
example,
Blossoms
when we played, I don't know, we've played a lot of shows over the last few years, so obviously when it's a headline show, your crowd know all the words, but say you go to a festival and
that's true, yeah,
people are waiting for the headliner and they're not really bothered, you've kind of got to find an extra 10% from somewhere to kind of give you that motivation. Or I found that over time I've got better at that, but I remember, for a few years I was purely reliant on how the crowd were to be like, if it was a good gig or not. If it was a bit flat, I'd come off like, oh, you kind of, like you said, you do feed off the crowd's energy, and you've kind of got to train yourself to not do that, really, because you can't always rely on that. But it helps if they're going crazy. You're instantly going to have a good gig, no matter what. Even if your in-ears are messing up, even if you can't even hear yourself, like if you can hear them singing along and clearly having a good time, then you're going to have a good time.
Gig, aren't you? Because there aren't going to be thousands of people out there singing the words back to you, are there?
No, and I suppose because it's the first of its kind, I think we'll have like energy and momentum from not playing for so long, because this is the longest we've ever not played for. So I think we'll have that adrenaline anyway, just because it's like we're in a venue and we're playing live. But if it continues and we keep doing a few of them, then I agree, and we'll have to find you'll have to find that kind of momentum, like you said, that you get off the crowd. But we'll see how it goes.
And lastly, Tom, and thank you firstly for taking time out to come and hang out with us again. Can you tell us the details of this virtual gig next month, when it is, and how people can see you guys perform?
Yeah, it's through an app called Melody VR. So the tickets are on sale now from Ticketmaster. I think just search Blossoms London Melody VR, and the gig is on Thursday, December the 3rd at 8:30. I think we go on stage. So buy a ticket, and then I think once you've bought a ticket, that'll explain how to view it. So just head to Ticketmaster and search Blossoms, and you'll find it all there.
Brilliant. Tom, as always, good to speak to you. Say hello to the boys from me.
Stay out. Yeah, I will do.
Cheers, mate. That's Tom Ogden there, lead singer of Blossoms. Let's speak to Chris Difford now from Squeeze. Hello, Chris.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Tim from Manchester texted and say last gig Squeeze at the Lowry. There you go.
What a beautiful night. What a beautiful night.
And what a great venue to be in. That's
oh my God, the sound in there is extraordinary.
It is. The sound in there is perfect. You've already been doing virtual gigs. How have they been for you? I mean, just some of the same conversation that Tom and I had about feeling that energy from a crowd and seeing them sing the lyrics back to you.
Well, nothing can replace the live show. That's definitely true. But the shows that I've been doing have been from my garden shed since March, and really they've all been on Zoom, which is a small kind of platform to be on. But I've had like 300-400 people on at a time, and that's like playing in a small club for me, and it's just been great to have a community spirit. It's been like having a social club, if you like.
How has it worked financially? Don't worry, I'm not your accountant, nor am I HMRC. I'm more interested in whether it is a viable option for bands going forward.
Well, the ones that I've been doing have been purely to raise money for like the Royal College of Nursing or Teenage Cancer, or just recently I've been doing a virtual tour for pubs and clubs that are on the edge of closing down. So I've not actually made any money from it, but I've raised over £25,000, which I'm very proud of. But I know that Squeeze, and particularly Glenn and myself, we are looking forward to the day when we can find a suitable venue for us to stream some live music from.
Do you think that, look, the older we get, the more difficult it becomes. There's more barriers to us kind of going out, as it were.
Yeah.
Do you think that actually the pandemic and what it has done to live music is maybe a catalyst to us accepting a different way of consuming live music?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are certain companies who've got it absolutely right, like Drift and ATC Management. You know, with people like Ellie Goulding and you know Nick's videos have been brilliantly put together, and they're worth watching. But watching a band on stage in front of an empty hall or theatre, I don't know whether that's my cup of tea. I would prefer to see. I'd prefer to see somebody that I really want to see in a very interesting location like the Nick Drake one, for instance.
So, okay, I wasn't really saying either or. It was more, do you think that, as we was discussing with Blossoms, there are people who won't be able to see Squeeze because you can't get to every part of the world where you have fans?
Sure.
So, do you think it part of the business model going forward for live music is that live streaming is going to be automatically a component of what you do now?
Well, two things. I said Nick Drake and I meant Nick Cave. I'm sorry. And secondly, I would say that as somebody who is not a great flyer, I'm not great on planes, to be able to do a concert and stream it and for it to go out in Japan and all over the places that Squeeze have never been, I think is only like a plus for us, or for me anyway. I mean, obviously I like to go to places around the world and visit them as a tourist, but it does have its advantages, streaming, but it has to be done artistically right, and I know that Glenn and I are trying to find the right place for us to play.
And also it can't just be, can it, Chris, just putting the gig on live? I think, as we were discussing with Tom, what Melody VR are doing with you, you have to have a different experience to make up for the fact you're not in the room.
Well, indeed, yeah. I mean, that's the thing that the Zoom concerts have given to me. I can see in everybody's living room. So, like, when someone's fallen asleep and they got a plate of fish and chips on their chest, I can prod them and have a laugh and a joke, and everybody joins in. You know, so I don't know. I've got very mixed views about the future of streaming, because what I really want, like everybody, is live music to come back to the theatre, to the stage, and for us to get back to work. You know, only this weekend I've been speaking to some of my peers who are sitting at home thinking, what can I do? What can I do? And you know, it's just extraordinary, the fear and the anxiety that I hear in these people's voices.
Let's speak to Rick Salmon, who's the head of Drift, a business that you mentioned before, Chris. It's a live stream business which has already hosted online gigs by the likes of Kylie and Niall Horan. Rick, good afternoon.
Hello there, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming onto the show. How do your virtual gigs work?
And hello, Chris, as well, and thanks for those kind words. Yeah, I suppose the guys have touched on, or you've all touched on, the kind of the important considerations already, but just to drill into it a bit more, I suppose what we do at Drift is a bit different in the sense that we really try to present and produce. I suppose this is a new format, really. It's not trying to make it a replacement for live. It was never meant to be a replacement for live. It's currently a replacement for live because as music fans and as managers and agents, we cannot wait to go back and be out on the road and seeing live music. That goes without saying. It's such an important ecosystem, such an important economy for the UK and the world as well. So it's kind of it's an opportunity to present it as a different thing. There's all the capturing the energy and the risk and the jeopardy that goes on a live show. So things can go wrong, things screw up, people get things wrong, things fall over. You can still capture that, but you can present it in a really interesting way. Basically, we realized really early on when we did the first couple of shows. We did Laura Marling was the first show that we did. Now at a gig where everyone's this collective spirit, and that's what live music's all about. But actually, not trying to replicate that, but using that to our advantage. So when you have to take the audience out of the equation, actually, all of a sudden, it frees up how you can film something. It frees up how you can capture something. I had a sudden realization. All I've watched all my life is music DVDs. It's a massive passion of mine, and it is for many of us. And of course, you don't really think about the fact that when you're watching it on a TV screen at home, you're kind of the second-class citizens, because the first-class citizens were all the people at the show at the time that bought tickets to be there in the venue. So it kind of means that us watching it at home later down the line, we don't have as good an experience, because the performer wasn't really performing for us. The performer was performing for the people in the room, and the stage was set up for the people in the room, and the lighting was set up for the people in the room, and so on and so forth. All of a sudden, taking the audience out of the equation and then being able to film the artist with cameras wherever you want, so you can get up close and personal, and you're not having to worry about cameras getting in the way or the gear getting in the way. It's like a new thing. It's like a combination of a music video and a live show, and that, I think, has been a bizarre silver lining to come out of all this madness that we've been going through.
Chris, do you see that as a silver lining?
I do, actually, and the work that I've seen Drift do, it's always an inspired view, but because you can get the camera in where you can't normally get it, as you were just saying. And I think that's important for someone who's sitting at home. They want to be part of the show. They want to have a personal ticket to get close to somebody like Ellie Goulding, who has such beautifully personal songs. And the way that was shot actually brought you right into the heart of those songs. And I think that's extremely important.
Do you think, Rick, for bands at a certain stage of their career and of certain stature, that this will now be an integral part of the thought process when touring? Is which venues are appropriate, which ones should we invest in this technology to make sure?
Yeah, I think so. I think for a record label to be able to consider this to be part of an overall album campaign, and so to be able to do a live ticketed event for fans all around the world. Chris's point earlier was, in fact, I think your point, it was really relevant, that all of a sudden kind of being able to democratize and globalize live music, so you can legitimately play a live event for people and present it beautifully, and it legitimately feel like a live collective experience, which these shows can and do if done right. But be able to reach fans in all parts of the world. I mean, we did a show with Niall Horan last weekend before last, from the Royal Albert Hall, and it was a phenomenal success. It sold nearly 130,000 tickets. It was a bizarrely huge success.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how much per ticket?
$20 or
$20, 130,000 tickets.
Yeah, and Niall amazingly dedicated all of his proceeds to crew charities, which was amazing of him, and obviously raised a huge amount of money. So, but amazingly, it got tickets were bought in 151 countries. Wow. Which is just astonishing when you think about it. And the list of countries is mental. There were tickets being bought in the Pitcairn Islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There was a couple of ticket buyers in Sudan. There were a couple of ticket buyers in Kazakhstan. Like, it was mad looking at the list of countries. So this amazing ability, because let's face it, touring, doesn't matter how big or small the band is, it only ever really goes through major metropolitan cities. So, and tickets, unfortunately, have got to the point now where they're quite expensive for normal tours. So, it prices a lot of people out of the market. And if you live 4 or 5 hours away from a city that a tour's going through, even if you could afford the ticket, can you afford to get there? Can you afford to stay overnight? Do you know what I mean? There's all those kind of considerations. So there's a really beautiful kind of global democratization that I think that goes along with these kind of shows. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, doing things like that around an album campaign, doing a live stream maybe the beginning or the end of a long tour, I think makes a lot of sense. And just, again, just treating it as another creative format, because really we haven't had a new format in a sense to work with for a while. Music video has been around for 30 years. Touring is touring. Social media has given us another format, artists communicating via social media, but that's a fairly limited creative format in a sense. It's more of a communication medium in a way. So I think it is exciting, and certainly from the conversations that we're having with all the labels and agents around the world, I think it's very quickly becoming established as just a thing that you'll add to the strategy.
Makes sense. Rick Salmon, the head of Drift, which is a live stream business. Get in contact with us. 85058 is the text number. We've also got Chris Difford here from Squeeze. Lots of text coming in about the last band they saw. Now, I was thinking more up until March, but I mean, if you do want to say that you saw Blossoms in 2017, I get that, but that's fine. Glastonbury, though, last band seen was The Cure. Last gig was Keane in the Albert Hall, had 7 gigs cancelled this year, including Squeeze. No interest in virtual gigs, says this person on the text. I saw Ben Watts at the Portsmouth Assembly Rooms a couple of days before the first lockdown, maybe 30 people there. Everyone was feeling terrified of the coming virus. Great gig from Ben, very intimate. I'm missing that live connection. Virtual gigs, not for me, says Johnny Ralph, owner of Glory Boy Records in Somerset. Hi, Johnny. My last gig was Iron Maiden in 2017. Well, I mean, whoa, you need to get back on it again. When we eventually are allowed to do that. Martin in Nottingham said last gig was Half Man Half Biscuit in Bristol on the 6th of March. Can't wait for them to start again. Hello Nihal, my last concert to attend was Elton John at the O2 years ago. Really expensive, by the way, but I thought also years ago if it would be possible to have a circular or rectangular device sitting on a coffee table, all of a sudden it lights up and there in front of you, 360-degree form of your favourite singers, bands, orchestras playing seemingly live with a virtual audience, creating the atmosphere, all via Wi-Fi. Live gigs cannot be beaten, really, though, can they? Says Dennis. No, that's true, but as was pointed out by Rick Salmon, this isn't about replacing live gigs. This is about giving us a chance, wherever we are in the world, to see the acts that we really want to see. How comfortable do you feel about that? Do you think that that is the future, that an integral part of touring now is to have these? Have you seen any virtual gigs? If so, get in contact with me and tell me how you felt about them and what it was like, that experience. But now, at 26 minutes to 2, let's get the headlines. Anna Hodges is here.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Senior Conservatives have been trying to defuse a row after Boris Johnson reportedly described the devolution in Scotland as a disaster and Tony Blair's biggest mistake. The Community Secretary Robert Jenrick says the Prime Minister had always supported devolution and was referring to the rise of the SNP in Scotland rather than the policy itself. The government says it won't be able to decide until the end of the month what restrictions will be put in place in England once the current lockdown ends on December. Labour's ruling National Executive will meet this afternoon to consider Jeremy Corbyn's suspension from the party. In response to last month's report on anti-Semitism, the former Labour leader suggested that the scale of the problem had been overstated. And we'll see Dawn French as Geraldine Granger again for 3 festive episodes of The Vicar of Dibley. The 10-minute versions of the programme will be on during the run-up to Christmas. Now with the sport, here's Della Floyd.
Thank you, Anna. It's the battle of the Grand Slam champions this afternoon at the ATP Tour Finals in London. The US Open champion Dominic Thiem takes on the French Open champion Rafael Nadal. Our tennis correspondent Russell Fuller is at the O2.
And having won their opening matches on Sunday, both have a chance to qualify for the semi-finals with a match to spare. In fact, irrespective of what happens in the evening match in this group between Stefanos Tsitsipas and Andrei Rublev, Nadal will definitely make the last 4 if he can beat Thiem in straight sets. Tough ask, though, against the US Open champion and the man who won their last meeting in 4 tight sets in the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. Thiem, like Nadal, initially considered very much a clay court player, but the Austrian says at times these days he feels even more comfortable with a hard court underneath his feet.
You can watch that match on BBC Two from 2 o'clock. 5 Live Sports Extra, meanwhile, has commentary of the other match, which Russell mentioned, defending champion Stefanos Tsitsipas against Andrei Rublev from 8 this evening. Lewis Hamilton says becoming the most decorated driver in Formula One history doesn't mean anything unless he continues to lead the fight against racism in the sport. As the sport's only black driver, Hamilton has been at the forefront of the Black Lives Matter movement. Rebecca Clancy is the Times motor racing reporter.
He has really enjoyed this year and the downtime that he's been afforded to decide what he wants to use his platform for. We know he's big on climate change, we know he has a vegan diet, and we know he's very much led the way, particularly in Formula One, with Black Lives Matter. That's his focus, and that's almost why he was saying that he wants to stay in racing. It's not to win that 8th World Championship.
The chair of Kick It Out, Sanjay Bandari, says he would support Paul Elliott if he were able to put himself forward for the position of FA chairman. It follows the resignation of Greg Clark for using unacceptable language about black players. Elliott is currently the chair of the FA's Inclusion Advisory Board. Here's Bandari.
I think the most important thing for the chair of the FA is that it's someone with the right credentials to lead. And I think my gripe with football jobs generally and the way they're allocated in the industry is that it's closed networks and cronyism. And I think it's about having fair and transparent processes. And I think that's the most important thing. But there will be plenty of candidates from the minority communities that could do that job.
The Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden says he's held constructive conversation with football leaders on governance, diversity and getting fans back to stadiums. Following a virtual summit on the future of football earlier, Dowden says he wants to make progress on important issues for the game's long-term future. The Ireland head coach Andy Farrell is considering his captaincy options ahead of Saturday's match against England at Twickenham. It comes after Johnny Sexton's injury. Young second-row forward James Ryan is the favourite to take over. Former Ireland captain Rory Best was the special guest on the Rugby Union Weekly podcast.
I'd be really excited about James. I think he's somebody that everyone likes. He's a wee bit strange with some of his habits, but he's really likeable. And I think that would be one of the top things that I'd look for if I was playing in a team, that you like the captain and you want to play for the captain.
Check that Rugby Union Weekly pod out via BBC Sounds. Finally, Exeter will begin their Premiership title defence this Friday without flanker Jacques Vermeulen. It's after the South African underwent shoulder surgery. The club say he'll be out for an extended period. That's the latest from BBC Sport.
Available now on BBC Sounds.
Welcome to The Players, the podcast that flips the script on how we talk football.
I know in my mind, and I'm very clear what do I have to do.
I've experienced a lot of stuff that no one should ever experience.
I'm passing the mic to those who know it best, the players themselves.
We are expected to win. Our federation, our country expects that from us.
What really goes on and off the pitch.
Why did I put the cowboy hat on?
I'm Beck Smith, and this is The Players. Subscribe on BBC Sounds.
First for news and the best live sport. This is BBC 5 Live. Nahal Arthanaika.
We're talking virtual gigs and how you feel about the idea of the music industry doing more of them, even when we come out of lockdown, even when life returns to whatever you regard to be normal. What do you think? A really interesting text has come in. Rick Salmon we have with us, who's the head of Drift. It's a live stream business. And this is about actually people who really love music, Rick. But this Jim will Mix It, I believe, on Twitter, said there are loads of people who love music but can't go to live gigs, those with mental and physical issues that prevent attendance. And that's a really good point as well, Rick, isn't it? Because live music has been very difficult for people who suffer from anxiety or on the autism spectrum. It's very difficult to go to live shows, isn't it?
It is, and funnily enough, it's great that you brought it up. We've been approached by a couple of different charities in different sectors, including deaf, a very high-profile deaf charity, and I think, yes, there's ways of presenting music to people who find the accessibility of a normal venue challenging for whatever reason. And again, I think that the beauty of digital is that it can provide us with amazing solutions for certain things. But again, it's never to take away from what live music is and what it is at its core. But yeah, when something like this comes along and you find, look at sport. I'm sure most of your listeners are huge sport fans as well. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan. I like going.
Yes,
to
Rick Salmon. Yes, Rick Salmon.
I had to slip it in then. Yeah, sorry.
Top man.
And so going up to the ground, obviously, is still one of the best days out. But totally different experience. I'd love to sit at home on my sofa with a cold beer and watch our team play football as well. Different experience. But there's pros and cons to both of it. I live in South London. Cons to both of it. I live in South London, so I don't have to schlep all the way up to North London, and so on and so forth. If we happen to lose 1-0 against some, substandard team, and we have to try home down
or
the
throw away a 3-goal lead.
Or throw away a 3-goal lead, exactly. Those kind of, when you're trudging back down past the bagel shops and you've got your head in your hands. Yeah. So, joking aside, it's just a different thing. Someone described it as a hardback versus a paperback, which is another good way of looking at it. It just, from what you take away from the joy of going to a live show and what comes with that physical sense, world, you actually gain in other aspects, accessibility, reaching fans in parts of the world you can never get to in a physical tour. The creative, what you can do with the dynamic of a show. You can do stuff. It's bizarrely quite limiting what you can do on stage in a certain way, because creating dynamic and quiet and loud and the moments of calm and moments of you thought can be quite tricky in front of a few thousand people, because it's hard to manipulate a crowd in that sense. It's one of the great challenges of live music, one of the great joys of live music when it goes right as well. But again, you can, when you're in a more controlled environment, you can do stuff. You can create more of a narrative arc. You can create more dynamic, and so on and so forth. So there's real pros and cons.
How unobtrusive is the technology for the bands themselves, Rick? So, for instance, if there is a lead singer cam where you can see what the lead singer is seeing out into the audience, what's the tech like to enable that to happen without it being an annoyance to the band themselves?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So our shows tend not to involve a huge amount of tech. They actually try and focus more on the performance and the artist and so on and so forth. I mean, it's involving tech in the sense that we're streaming it, and there's there's kind of chat interaction and all that kind of stuff that you can do if you so wish. But actually, Melody VR, who Tom mentioned earlier, and a whole host of other kind of tech platforms like that, have got some really interesting tech developing. Again, it's a bit like sport as well. There's different ways of viewing sport. You can view sport via player cams. You can view sport via, fan commentary. But actually, most of us just default to watching it normally. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that's a direct comparison to the tech in music. I think there will be some really interesting immersive tech that comes along. VR in itself, has been around for quite a number of years now. Is that going to enhance? Touch on, even the sense that if you have a big LED screen behind an artist with like fan interaction going on in it, bizarrely, you've got to film from so far back to be able to get the scale and the resolution of the screen behind the performer in kind of the right kind of focus, that it means that the artists themselves are quite small on the screen. It's weird little production questions that come up when you're in, with that kind of stuff. So. But I think it's exciting in the same way that tech is an exciting development in so many parts of our lives. I think there will be things that come about that we haven't even thought of yet.
Chris, interesting, wasn't it, that Rick was talking about Nahor and the places where people paid those $20 to come and see it. I mean, this must be really exciting for a band like yours, which will have fans all over the world. The fact that you can now, as part of your touring,
it is massive. I mean, everything that's been said, that Rick said, lights my fire. I mean, obviously, being on stage at Madison Square Garden or the Albert Hall is a big thrill for me in my career. But to get to people who can't get to shows, and maybe people's psyche will change from in the next couple of years, and maybe they will want to stay home and have fish and chips and watch Squeeze from the living room, and I think it's people with imagination that are only going to make that work. And that's definitely what I've seen in the last few shows that I've watched.
Let's speak to Kevin, who's in Widnes. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Neil.
Now, you went to I think I was at that gig. It's an extraordinary gig. Yeah, just tell us about this. You went with your 22-year-old daughter. Who did you go and see in Manchester?
We went to see Liam Gallagher, supported by Sam Fender.
Oh, what a show! What a show! I was at that gig.
At the Ritz in Manchester on the sticky, bouncy floor.
Yeah, very sticky.
It was just amazing.
Do you think... So, and you were with your 22-year-old daughter. That, by the way, can I just say, that fills me full of hope, because my 11-year-old daughter doesn't want to hold my hand at the moment. I'm hoping by the time she's 22 that she'll want to come to a show with me.
I've been to gigs with my son as well. I've got a 40-year-old son, and I'm 61, so...
Amazing.
I'm still doing it.
Mate, I'm with you. Saluting you, Kevin, in Widnes all day long. What about the idea then of a virtual gig? Of you and your daughter sitting on the sofa at home. You don't have to queue for the toilets. The floors are not sticky. You're not going to have to spend an hour getting out of your own house. Why not do that?
I could, but it would just be something where I couldn't get tickets to actually be there. There's nothing better than being there. The reason we're so keen to go and see Sam Fender and Liam Gallagher, Sam had had to cancel a previous gig at Neighbourhood Weekend in Warrington the previous summer, and we didn't get to see him, so that was the reason we went. Part of the reason I went to that as well.
Mate, that ticket was about the hottest ticket in the northwest of England that night.
It certainly was.
Yeah, I mean, that was a serious...
The thing was, there's such a mixed crowd as well. There was guys who'd been following Liam since the early old days of Oasis, who'd seen him 10 times in the crowd, who were like in the 40s and 50s. So, yeah, it was a special night.
So you're still going to gigs then, when we can again?
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's amazing. That's amazing. Kevin in Widnes, good to speak to you. Oh, no, go on. Do you want to say something else?
I've actually got tickets for the rearranged Neighbourhood Festival in Warrington next summer. Hopefully May, it'll all be back on.
Who's on the bill, Kevin?
Oh, just about everybody you can think of. Well,
I don't know. I can think.
I can't remember.
Right, don't worry about it. Don't worry. You're just
Road, not looking out the Stone Road. I'm on the radio now. I can't think of the name.
No,
I
feel you. I feel you. That's
everyone that you would in the current indie atmosphere is around. So it's going to be awesome.
Which one of your kids are you going with then?
Well, they're both going to that one actually.
Oh, I love that. You are everything I want to be in a dad. Everything I want to be. That's superb, Kevin. Kevin, how old are you again?
61.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
Good man.
Good man. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kevin in Widnes, thank you. Let's speak to Rob, who's in Shropshire. Hi, Rob.
Hi, all right.
I'm good. So, what do you think of the idea then? And let's be clear, nobody's saying they replace live gigs. But could you see yourself parting with a bit less money and watching a virtual gig? Less hassle?
Maybe. I do tend to like, when I go to gigs, the first thing you do like the next day or the next evening is you tend to look on YouTube and watch the gig of what people have videoed on their phones and that. And so you tend to do that anyway. So if it's a band that I really like and I couldn't get to see, then yes, probably.
What was the last band you went to see then?
The last band was Editors.
When was it?
In Birmingham in February. In February.
Yeah.
And I can remember because there's a group of us that tend to go to concerts together, and I can remember the conversation as we were waiting in the foyer to go in. It was about COVID and about because like it was just before the lockdowns and that, and the conversation this will come to an end, because what was on the news and that at the time.
Do you know what, Rob? Thank you very much indeed for getting in contact with us today. Ali Wolf is the general manager of the Clapham Grand in South London. I think I did a gig at the Clapham Grand supporting Sheep on Drugs many years ago. Ali, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Well, how are you? I mean, what kind of support are you receiving? It's a great venue, the Clapham Grand.
Thanks, man. I mean, stressed, probably, basically. We've was lucky enough to receive an Arts Council grant, which has been fantastic. But obviously, it only goes so far. We're now in our second lockdown, rescheduling dates. You know, it's a headache, but we're persevering.
What about virtual gigs?
I mean, I'm a big fan. We did some really successful streams in the summer as part of our Safe the Ground crowdfunding campaign with Frank Turner, which were amazing. And then when we reopened the physical distancing, we did them as hybrid shows. So we streamed the show as well as having audiences in the room. I think it's a fantastic complement to a live show and a great short-term alternative. But it requires the act itself to have the fan base first. So for new music and new acts, I don't think it's actually solving the problem, if you see what I mean.
Does it make sense financially? Can it be monetised?
I think it can be monetised if the act has got the fan base power. Like with all these things, it requires the audience to be willing to pay. So if you've got the profile of the audience that have been starved the live product, then obviously they're going to be prepared to pay premium to watch something online because you've got the demand. But for new music that requires that entry-level point of a gig, obviously I think there's a real stumbling block there because the costs attached to streaming it's not cheap. It's not a cheap business model to implement. You want to do it as high quality as possible. So there's a complication when it comes to price point for anything that hasn't got an audience. But if you've got the audience, then I think it's an amazing alternative to live.
So this has come about, Ali, largely because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Do you think it is now, though, here to stay? It will become an integral part for bands of a certain, or any DJs, bands of a certain stature, that this is just going to be part of the live experience going forward?
I think it will be part of their marketing campaign, whether it replaces live or a part of live, I'm not sure. But the way I see it is it's almost like when pirate radio happened, it's the capability to turn on your own TV channel. So if you've got the capability to command an audience, then you've got the capability to have your own show, but without needing a TV station. You just do it through your own website and ticket it. So I think what's happening here is acts that have got the production and the finance behind them to make their own TV shows, which is in a sense what they are, will use that as part of the strategy of their whole campaign. I'm more excited about the capability to stream a live event whilst it's happening in the venue to increase the eyes on a show that might not be able to come to the venue for, like was discussed earlier, accessibility issues, anxiety around returning to live. I think for the Grand, the future is a hybrid model that opens up the four walls of the venue to a much broader audience, and therefore I think will help increase talent that hasn't got an audience to kind of grow, if that makes sense.
It does. Ali, thank you very much indeed. It's Ali Wolf from Clapham Grand. Chris Difford, thank you from Squeeze for being on the show as well. Chris, any virtual gigs planned that you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, I've got a couple of Zoom shows. One for the Albert in Strood, which is on the 5th of December. And the big one is the 19th of December for my friends Help Musicians. And Jules Holland is going to help me raise awareness for that one.
Superb. Chris, thanks for taking time out.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank
Chris
you.
Difford there from Squeeze. Let's speak to Julia, who's in Essex. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Nahal.
What do you think of stream gigs? What was the last gig you went to?
Oh, goodness me, the last gig I went to. I think it might have been Catherine Jenkins in Hyde Hall in Chelmsford.
How long ago was that?
That was a little while ago.
Julia, you need to get back. When we come out of this, or which we will, you need to put your party shoes on again, Julia.
No, actually, I lie. It was George Benson at the Royal Albert Hall.
Oh, nice. That is a smooth night out. George Benson. Come on, you've got great taste. Okay, how long ago was that?
I'm an Essex soul girl. Come on.
I know, don't worry. I know all about
You know how it is.
I know exactly how it is. Come on, Steve Walsh. You what? Anyway, right, before we reminisce too much, Julia, so what do you think about this then? Is this the future for you? Sitting in your living room with a glass of wine?
It's something that we've embraced, and we've embraced it because of our son, really, because he's launched a venture called Cowcorn. Live streams on Zoom a month with a sporting star. So I'm a consumer of that now, along with my hubby, and so far we've had chats with Michael Holding, David Seaman, Victoria Pendleton.
Wow.
And during the course of the thing, because it's live, you can then send your own questions in, which then get asked. So it's not just that you're watching something live, but you're then able to actually physically interact with it. And it makes you feel part of something. And I think, I'm trying to think who they've got coming up. I think the next one is the athlete, Michelle Griffith Robinson. And then in December, it's Harry Redknapp and Chris Robshaw. So
amazing.
It's going to be brilliant. It's really, really good.
That's exciting. Julia?
And it's just a new way of... And I think you could do it with music as well. You could have sort of someone playing a tune and you can send your questions in and have little Q&As in between. But no, it's brilliant.
Good. You're definitely embracing that. Old school Essex soul girl. Love that, Julia. Take care. Right, that's it from us. Rick Salmon, well, in terms of what we're talking about musically wise, Rick Salmon from Drift, thank you as well for coming on to the show. Let's move on just quickly to talk about what's going on in the world of football, because the Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden says a football summit earlier was constructive. Now, the virtual conference brought together key representatives from across English football to look at a number of issues, from spectators in stadiums, a financial bailout for smaller clubs, and equality and diversity. We're going to be talking about this more later on in the programme. But now let's speak to our sports news reporter, Laura Scott. Hi, Laura.
Hello.
So who was involved today? Can you give us a little bit more of what Oliver Dowden's reaction to how things went?
Yeah, of course. So there were key stakeholders from across the game. So representatives from the Premier League, the EFL, the FA, the PFA, Women in Football, fans groups, Kick It Out, the anti-discrimination charity, and also a couple of other people like the former FA chairman David Bernstein. And it seems like it was at least a constructive sort of first meeting of this group. Oliver Dowden said that they spoke about governance and finances, diversity, and the all-important question of getting fans back. And he said, I want to work together with football to make progress on important issues for the game's long-term future, discussions to continue as we start our fan-led review of governance. So it doesn't seem like there were any decisions made today, but certainly a meeting of minds of people across the game, sort of covering all the sort of key areas and tackling these important issues.
Karen Brady, West Ham Vice Chair, earlier told the BBC, Laura, that trial events ahead of supporters' return in March is the current plan. Is that viewed as a realistic prospect within the game?
Well, I think it's what a lot of people are really interested to know, when fans might be able to return. Obviously, it all depends on the tiered restrictions and whether they go back to pilots or whether they bring back, limited capacities across the game is still unclear. Clearly, a lot of people very keen to see fans back, and it's one of the number of, really important issues that football needs to tackle going forward.
Laura, thank you very much indeed. We're going to be talking about this later on in the show, actually. We're going to go back to this financial bailouts, I should say, for smaller clubs, and some of the other issues that were discussed with the Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden, and, of course, the football authorities. But coming up next on 5 Live, before all of that, legend Irvine Welsh is going to be on the show.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 2 o'clock. This is Claire Ronacres. The Scottish Conservatives have sought to distance themselves from controversial comments reportedly made by Boris Johnson yesterday on devolution. The Prime Minister is said to have told a meeting of Tory MPs that devolution had been a disaster north of the border. The Community Secretary, Robert Jenrick, sought to defend the remarks, saying Mr Johnson did support devolution. But the shadow Scottish Secretary, the Labour MP Ian Murray, said the SNP also deserved criticism.
Part of the problem we've got at the moment, of course, is we have a Prime Minister and a Conservative Party that doesn't believe in devolution and never have, and we have a Scottish National Party that doesn't believe in devolution because they want to break up the United Kingdom. When you have two parties that don't believe in the thing that delivers politics and delivers policies for the Scottish people, there's only going to be one loser in all that, and that's the people of Scotland.
Ministers are thinking about whether to strengthen the tiered system of coronavirus restrictions in England once the national lockdown ends. The Community Secretary, Robert Jenrick, said everyone wanted to see a significant easing on December the 2nd, but he suggested additional rules might be needed in the top tier. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has told MPs that the government has now reserved 355 million doses of coronavirus vaccine for the whole of the UK. He said agreements have been signed with 7 separate vaccine developers. volunteers from St John Ambulance are to support the NHS in providing vaccinations for COVID-19 and flu. Richard Lee is the charity's Chief Operating Officer.
Many of the roles will be around supporting people as they go through the process of having vaccination for flu or for COVID, because people need support. This is a frightening time for people, and there are patient groups where one-to-one support is required, and we're providing a range of people from advocates through to support workers through to some of our people who will be administering vaccinations.
The United Nations Refugee Agency says a full-scale humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Ethiopia almost 2 weeks after fighting began in the northern region of Tigray. The UN High Commission for Refugees says every day about 4,000 people are fleeing to Sudan to escape the violence. Dana Hughes, a spokesperson for the UNHCR in Nairobi, said the situation on the ground was very concerning.
We are looking at a potential humanitarian disaster, catastrophe. More than 27,000 Ethiopians have fled the border to Sudan since the beginning of this conflict. We're looking at an average of 4,000 a day since November 10th. This is a scale that this region hasn't seen in decades.
Northamptonshire police are investigating the theft of millions of pounds worth of Apple products from a lorry on the M1 a week ago. The driver and security guard were tied up after the lorry was intercepted and driven to the Bridge of Crick, where the goods were loaded onto another vehicle. And the funeral has taken place in Lancashire of the entertainer Bobby Ball, who died last month after testing positive for COVID-19. Mourners at the church in Lytham, including Ball's comedy partner Tommy Cannon, wore his trademark red braces. BBC News at 2
Brand new drama on BBC Two.
Young people are our capital. Just make yourselves indispensable.
A new intake of graduates.
I can't believe that I'm here. Nothing good ever happens past 2 a.m.
Everything good happens past 2 a.m.
Yes!
All with something to prove.
We both know what you're capable of.
Harper, you can't trade your way out of this. It's reckless.
This is where we are now.
Cover that risk now.
Industry.
You ready to bite the head off a bear?
Continues tonight at 9:15 on
BBC. Arthur Naika.
So thank you for all of your texts in the first hour about gigs that you've been to see. I'm really, really loving people who are going to gigs with their grown-up children now as well. That's amazing. I said to my son the other day about this. He's 13, just turned 13 over the weekend, about would he be up for going to gigs with me? And he was like, yeah, of course, absolutely. In fact, we have very similar music tastes. Me, of course, being a hip-hop fan, a rap music fan, means that the link between myself and my son listening to the music that he listens to actually isn't much of a link at all, right? Because, in fact, some of the music that I listen to, like Eric B. and Rakim, things like that, he really loves. Eminem, he really loves. Anyway, Mark in Bath has said, the suggestion of virtual gigs is surely similar to the situation with football at the moment, not the same on the telly. Yeah. I think there's just more scope to experience it. You know, if I was in that business at the moment and thinking about virtual gigs and how they work, if you are going to do that, it has to be different. It can't just be cameras set up at the back end of the hall and then just, you know, a camera or two on a crane swooping shots in and out. It has to be, because the technology is there to be able to make it more immersive, as they say, experiential, as they say. So there is scope to make it interesting. I thought it was fascinating, you know, listening to the conversation about Niall Horan, of course, from One Direction, who, you know, they sold, what was it, 130,000 tickets for an Albert Hall show. What does the Albert Hall hold? About 5,000? So there's people all over the world willing to pay $20 to do that. I took my son to see Bruce Springsteen when he was 7. I mean, Glyn in Newport, this is grade A parenting. Bruce played for 3.5 hours and he loved it. We've also been to Iron Maiden, Biffy Clyro and Australian Pink Floyd. My younger days in a small club, I saw Duran Duran supporting Hazel O'Connor and UB40. Supporting the Pretenders would have no problem with watching a streamed concert. High Note won't top the being there feeling of a gig. But I suffer from sensitive hearing, can't do gigs easily, so watching a show at home would be fine with me. Also, great risk of over-romanticising live shows. Many large shows, the artists are a mile away and the sound can be variable. This is very, very true. Very true. I can't remember who did the comedy sketch once when he just said, look, might as well just put the CD cover down at the bottom of your garden and stand there with a warm pint. trying to absorb the music. That's what it's sometimes like. Saw the Orioles in Bristol just before first lockdown. They were amazing. I've subscribed to the Cribs online gig this weekend. Love the Cribs. For a Leeds band, I believe, from £10, as they're my favourite ever band and so underrated. Andrew from Bath. Yes, I agree with that. What's that? Men's, women's, that track is so good. Hi Nihal, my last gig was this February in Paris for the Japanese rock band Crossfaith. They were able to complete their European tour but cancelled dates in Italy. Since then I've purchased a handful of virtual shows for numerous bands in Japan, spending between £15 and £25. The shows are a great way for people to experience shows right now, especially for people like myself who cannot get on a plane and go around the world to see these bands live in their home countries. Craig in Somerset, thank you to you. Okay, 7 minutes past 2. My next guest is the best-selling writer, Irvine Welsh. He has a new book out, 3 stories written along with 2 other authors, his pals, for his story, The Providers. Irvine has brought back Frank Begbie from Trainspotting. Irvine, welcome to the show. Lovely to see you.
Lovely. Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
Great to have you here. What is your relationship like with Frank Begbie?
It's a bit like the relationship you have with anybody, any kind of character you've written, really. They're really like tools in a box, and you get them out. If you look at the job and you kind of get them out, and if there's nothing there in the toolbox, you have to forge new tools, basically. But, I mean, it's the Trainspotting kind of quartet, really. I've kind of probably got a special place in my affection, just because the first characters I wrote, and they've been around for some time now, so they've come in and out of different books and different movies, so I have got quite a kind of strange connection with them, but it's a weird thing. You don't think about them at all until you actually come to do the work, you know, until you come to write something, or you come to adapt something for screen or stage. So yeah, I don't really think about any of the characters in my kind of conscious day-to-day life.
You have to do this. You don't need to write anymore. You've been so incredibly successful. You don't need to.
Well, I do need to. I mean, I never wrote for money in the first place. I wrote because I needed to kind of express myself creatively in some way. You know, couldn't do it in music. Wasn't much of a painter. So I probably do need to write. Don't need to write for money, but I kind of need to write.
You definitely do. So what does it fulfill in you?
I think it's like I've never regarded myself as, I've always regarded it as pleasure and self-indulgence. I've never regarded it as a job. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I retired 30 years ago. I've just been indulging myself since then. It's just a great way to pass the time, because you feel that you're utilising every single experience that you've had. You're doing it in a creative way, so it's not going to waste. So you're not just dredging up kind of memories of reportage and biography and stuff like that, things that you've seen in places that you've been. You're actually trying to take all that stuff and forge something that's creatively exciting to you, that's dynamic, and it's just a great way of passing the time, really. I mean, I'd much rather be doing that than digging coal or just putting slabs down, and which I used to do. So it's a good way to express yourself and to earn a living in the process. Is there an aspect of problem solving? Yeah, I think every story or book is a bit like that. You're trying to you set a problem for yourself. You set you try to work things out as you go. I mean, I don't really know where the characters are going to end up or what they're going to do, but you're aware when you get into a piece of writing that there's a theme that you're addressing, and you're trying to work out that theme or understand it to your own satisfaction, or to find some kind of deeper truth in it that makes you feel maybe not even comfortable, maybe makes you feel a little challenged about it. And I think that's what I want to do. I want to try to get a reaction from myself, to push myself and challenge myself a little bit. I'm not really into just affirming in fiction how I feel about the world, because that would be quite boring to me.
Are there tests that you set yourself in order to make sure that they're real, the characters?
Not really, because they're not real to an extent. You kind of the only thing that the only realization of them, the only validation of anything that you write is in the readers. If the readers believe that obviously the readers know they're not real, but if they address some kind of shared reality or some kind of observed reality that people have. One of the best compliments that I can have is people all over the world, from Russia to South Africa to Argentina, they'll say to me, we've got a Begbie, we know a Begbie, or we know a sick boy, we've got a renter in our group, or there's a guy in our group we call Spud, or Bruce Robertson or whatever. And that's a great thing, because it means that you've hit on some kind of a universal archetype of character that people identify with.
What interests you more? The ability of humans to be amazing or the ability of humans to be loathsome?
I think you have to take you take both sides of it, really. I mean, I think we're at a time in our history with industrialization and give us great wealth, but it's given us a lot of problems as well. Imperialism and industrialism have given us great problems, and we're trying to get over them to forge a new common humanity. And so far, the results have been kind of mixed success, really. But you have to trust in human ingenuity and the spirit of humanity to advance and to move forward. And I like to put up all the red flags and all the obstacles, but I always like to have characters who, whatever kind of bad stuff they're doing or wrong turnings that they're taking, they're always kind of reaching for the light switch. They're always kind of trying to find light and hoping for a better world, even if it seems to be kind of coming down. Everything seems to be coming down on them, and they're always trying to find the joy in life, even in the most adverse circumstances. Because I think that's what people do. That's what we are, really. I think we're kind of we're learning machines.
I started reading The Providers, Owen, and with each page, the room that these characters in got more and more claustrophobic for me, and I loved it. The tension just rises and rises. How do you choreograph that so expertly? Where does that begin?
Well, I think it's like if you get memorable characters and you literally do stick them in a room, they'll write the story for you. The worst thing you can do as a writer is to kind of get in the way of that. You forge those characters from observation and from your subconscious, and then you stick them in the room together, and their interactions and what they would do, they literally kind of will tell the story for you. So, I mean, that was quite an easy story to write, really, because all the characters I had them all quite sort of either knew them from previous books or previous writing, or I had them in my head. So it was very easy just to almost kind of sit there and bang that out and to let them tell the story, really. It's like there's nothing really for me to do other than be almost like a kind of stenographer of it and get it all down there and to kind of craft it and hone it as a piece of storytelling. But that was exactly the effect I was trying to get. I was trying to get like kind of almost like Trainspotting meets Abigail's Party. Get a very claustrophobic kind of stage set of a story, like a black box where there is no real escape. And I think that family festivities tend to be like that. I mean, Christmas tends to be a bit like that. You don't see each other all year, and then suddenly you have to interact in these 3 days or so, 2 or 3 days together. You're stuck in this one small place, and you soon realise why you haven't seen each other the rest of the year.
Well, I mean, these are interesting people. Val, who is Frank's mother, of course, Elspeth, Frank's sister, Joe, his brother, Damaged all. Then, of course, Melanie, who's Frank, in this room. But I shouldn't say I don't believe you, because you're the one who wrote it, but it's so well crafted That the fact that you're saying, well, they it writes itself because they're just there. I just can't believe, because you have exploited me.
Obviously, you have to work and redraft, and you have to do. You're constantly asking the what if question. What if this happened? Or what if this kind of thing happened? But you know the psychology of the characters, and you know that they would try to. They're kind of battling against their past as well. They're prisoners of their past. But they're also heavily invested in their past. I mean, they don't really, they're kind of, on one level, they're pleased that Frank's changed, but they don't really believe that he's changed because they're not invested in that at all. They're more invested in the comfort of him being as he was. And he understands that as well. He completely understands that, and he's being kind of counter-manipulative towards the rest of them. So they're all trying to stake out their territory, really. And it's like life, when you get to, I think when you get to any point, when you get to your sort of mid to late 20s, life becomes a bit of an exercise in self-justification. And they're all trying to...
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's like everybody tries to... we have a number of paths that we can take, and it's like we can take we can be bohemians, we can be suburban domestic types, we can kind of be travellers, we can sort of we can get married, we can stay single, we can have kids, we can not have kids, we can travel, we can stay put. All these things involve choices, and everybody's made the different choices, and they're not all massively happy in the choices that they've made, but they're running with it, and they're trying. And in the process of doing that, they're trying to maybe denigrate or be a bit snippy about other people's lives. And I think this is just the way that people are. We feel very much trapped and ossified in our lives when we get to a certain point. Usually, once we've sort of sorted things out, it tends to be in our 30s. We get very kind of pompous and self-justifying, and then we kind of ossify in that. When we have some menopausal breakdown when we hit 40, but by and large, we feel that the walls literally are closing in on us, and this is the kind of world we've created for ourselves.
What will the 60s be like for you then?
My 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun. So far so good. But I think the only good thing about getting older, and there's not that many great things about it, but one thing is that you do kind of accrue that wisdom of experience, and you also stop, I think, being so bothered about stuff that is sort of very, stuff that seems to be very, very important, and very driving, and very central to who you are as a person and your identity in the world. It suddenly becomes less important, and I think you do start to enjoy life in a way a bit more. I mean, I think it's perversely. I really enjoyed my 20s, but they were totally messed up, and I didn't really enjoy my 30s very much, but I sort of enjoyed my 40s, and I really enjoyed my 50s, and I'm starting to, I'm just into my 60s now, so I'm starting to enjoy them too.
What are the bucket list, indeed, if you have a bucket list, things to achieve? I mean, you've achieved so much.
Yeah, I don't think of things that way. I mean, I don't have anything that I have to do. Anything that I have to do, I just tend to do it. I don't sort of, I've got the time and the money to be able to go anywhere that I want, and most places that I don't see it. It's like one place I've never been to is China, but I've also never been to Leicester, and that kind of bothers me just as much, So I don't believe that I have to go to Leicester before I die, I don't believe that I have to go to China before I die. It's not an important consideration. I think you try to get the best out of the place that you're in. I mean, if you can get to go to a new place, you try to get the best out of that.
Are you nomadic by nature?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of. I'm a traveller by nature. I tend to want to have a look at different things, and usually wait until the opportunity presents itself. I'll sort of, I won't pick one place and say that I'm fascinated by it. I'll have an opportunity to go somewhere, and then I'll spend a bit of time there and explore. And sometimes if I like it, I'll stay for a while. Sometimes I end up staying for years. I didn't plan to live in America for 10 years. It just happened that way. There's a lot of interesting parts of it. I planned to be in Holland for 6 months and was there for 2 years. I planned to be in Ireland for a year, was there for 5. So things kind of just catch up with you, really. You see things, you take an interest in them, and you suddenly become part of a bigger thing, part of the community, and that's great fun.
Was fame, wealth and success all it was cracked up to be?
Fame's boring, it's rubbish, it doesn't really give you anything, it's just that it's basically an imposition, but and success is kind of relative, really, because you can only be successful in your own terms. I've had books that have been kind of #1 bestsellers, and some of them I've not really been massively impressed by, and I've had other ones that are a bit more difficult and kind of artsy and out there, and they've not got a mass audience in the same way, but sometimes I've been more proud of these ones. So you can always find different ways of measuring success. But wealth is just good. It's good to have money. There's no question about it. And I believe that everybody should have money. Everybody should be really comfortable. And the most horrible thing is we've created a world whereby everybody could be really comfortable, but we use money to destroy people either by giving them nothing or by giving them way too much, and it just kind of messes with them.
How comfortably do you live in Miami? And I don't mean that in a material sense. I mean looking at what Miami is, and I went over there for the Winter Music Conference some years ago. It's quite a place. It's a very showy place.
Yeah, it is showy and flash. I kind of spend a lot of time there. I can't be there all the time. To me, it's a winter kind of retreat now. It's not. It's an interesting town in a lot of ways. It's a very art town. It's a very visual town, as you would expect from the light lends itself to that. It's not a big book town, but it has, it is an interesting place. It's a great place to write about. There's so many people from all different parts of America kind of tend to wash up there at some point or another. So it's got an edge to it too. I like it. I like that kind of life. It would drive me crazy to be in Miami all the year round. I couldn't do that. But for 3, 4, 5, 6 months of the year, it's fantastic to be in.
Do you have political conversations with Americans out there? I think obviously Florida voted for President Trump, and they said that the large kind of Cuban American population, Hispanic population, were quite integral in that happening.
Yeah, one of my best mates there is kind of he's a lovely guy, and he got he's Cuban American. He got into all this kind of Trump nonsense, so we have quite lively conversations, the pair of us. But it's been a really interesting time being there at this point in history, because there's so many things that are happening in America. They're happening all over the world, but if you look at the American dream, this is the first generation of people who are actually going to be poorer than their parents, are going to die before they're not going to live as long as their parents. And that's had a tremendous effect on the psyche of that country, and that's why I think that there is this whole existential fear, which is a great place for a kind of right-wing, kind of sort of pseudo-fascist demagogue to gain traction. And prior to that, you've had over here, you've had 35 years of neoliberalism, which has basically destroyed the working classes in both these countries. So you have a lot of people who are very angry, and they feel that the people that have supported and they continue to support, they seem to be continuing to support people who they must know are going to betray them. There's a horrible thing I read today from a nurse in, I think it was in Dakota, saying that all these old people who are dying of COVID, they're dying just really angry and frustrated. They didn't actually believe that we'd get COVID or that it existed. And it is that sort of, it's that kind of exceptionalist kind of sort of nightmare that was encouraged by Trump, that they're somehow immune and they're American and they're, nothing can stop them or hurt them and they're going to be great again. And I've had this pumped into them by Fox News for decades as well, and all these outlets, and actually, part of them actually want to believe this, and it's just being taken away from them at the last minute. It's a horrible tragedy. It's a very depressing kind of and distressing piece to read.
When you're having a chat with your Cuban mate, is there any? Because one thing that's happened in America that so many people talked about is how divisive it's become, where people can't seem to have any more a civilized conversation when they're... I guess you are diametrically opposed politically from someone who supports President Trump. It's probably not a great guess. It's not a very clever guess for me to make. I think it's fairly obvious. So how do you have that conversation? How does it remain civil?
We kind of we go out, we have a few drinks and a mark, and just sort of say we kind of agree to differ. You basically have to, I think, because it is such life is so polarised now, and it is such an intractable kind of thing. But sometimes I feel that we can acknowledge the sort of certain little truths in each other's arguments, but sometimes I feel like I'm getting to them. I often feel that I'm wearing them down and getting under his skin a little bit with some of the things that I've kind of been saying. But the problem is with the whole kind of social media and the whole kind of polarisation thing is that when you come out with something and you feel this impulse and you start agreeing with it, you become kind of encased in their ideology. You stop kind of thinking freely because you have this affirmation and this backup that every kind of prejudice that you have that isn't thought through is kind of being reinforced by other people. So you have a big mob behind you, and I think it's important not to polarise socially. I think it's important to try to have to try not to sort of. I've had a lot of pals, for example, who become pro-Trump and who pro-Brexit and all this kind of stuff, and I've found it, it's very difficult because you can see that this is just such a big from my point of view, I see it as a very self-harming kind of thing. But I think it's important to keep the discussion going and to keep the friendships going as well, because often they transcend politics, and I think that's the route to us kind of getting all onto the same page, because I think we have to be now. It's like we have this existential species threat and this massive economic change. We're moving to a world without wage, basically, without wages and without profits. So we have to embrace that, but we can only do that together. If we split into tribes, we just start shooting each other basically and eating each other, and that's our future.
Yeah, that's not a great future. I'm not going to put that in my diary for next year. I want to try and avoid that if at all possible. It's easier to avoid the former part of that because we don't have such guns. Does that worry you at all when you're in America? The prevalence of guns in America? Yeah,
it's strange. It's like when I remember when I was down in. When I was living in London in the 80s, and there was some kind of bomb in Victoria, some IRA bomb in Victoria Station shut down. My mum would phone me every day, is that near you? Has that happened to you? Did you see that bomb? And it's the same thing now. If somebody gets shot, she'll say, she'll phone up and say, is that near you? And all, but it's kind of the thing about it is that you get the crazy sort of mall shootings and the school shootings and all that, and they're horrific beyond words. It's an absolute abomination. But the most of the gun deaths in America happen in ghettos. They happen in really poor places. And I remember I was living in Chicago. Chicago had the most, the biggest number of homicides through guns. It was only happening in 3 very small areas of the city, and basically, people like myself would just never go in these areas of the city because you just would have no call to it. It's like there would be no reason for you to be there. And it's so sad that things have polarised to such an extent that and it was so amazing that the propaganda in America with the Trump propaganda was that areas of London and Paris were no-go areas. You know, it's like kind of what they're talking about. I mean, areas of Chicago have been racially, ethnically polarised, ethnically cleansed for years. I mean, black people have been physically moved out of North Chicago and put to get into the south side of Chicago. The whole of Cabrini Green's been destroyed because they wanted to pursue a de facto apartheid policy in so many American cities. So it is. It's not a kind of great situation at all.
No, not at all. Irving, please do stay with us. We want to talk to you some more. The Providers is 1/3, 3 novellas, The Seal Club, Alan Warner, Irving Welsh and John King. And The Providers is just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And like I said earlier on, the more you read it, the more claustrophobic, the more tense you become as you read it. Sign of fantastic writing and brilliant dialogue. We'll talk to Irving more after the headlines. It's 32 minutes past 2. Also, feel free to get your texts in. If there are questions, observations about Irving's career book that you've read previously, then feel free to share those thoughts with us and I'll put them to Irving Welsh here live on 5 Live. Now, though, it's time for the headlines with Anna Hodges.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
We're just hearing that a total of 11 council areas will be placed under Scotland's toughest coronavirus restrictions from 6 o'clock on Friday. Nicola Sturgeon has been telling SMPs. The First Minister says the overall level of infection remains higher than it needs to be. The Scottish Conservatives are distancing themselves from controversial comments reportedly made by Boris Johnson yesterday on devolution. The Prime Minister is said to have told a meeting of Tory MPs that devolution had been a disaster north of the border. The Communities Secretary Robert Jenrick has defended the remarks. The Health Secretary Matt Hancock's told MPs that the government has now reserved 355 million doses of coronavirus vaccine for the whole of the UK. He said agreements had been signed with 7 separate vaccine developers. And £5 million worth of Apple products have been stolen from a lorry on a motorway in Northamptonshire. The driver and a security guard were tied up while the goods were loaded onto another vehicle. Now with the sport, here's Della Floyd.
Straight to the ATP Tour Finals, where the US Open champion Dominic Thiem is playing the French Open champion Rafa Nadal. Russell Fuller has the latest.
And when the music fades, the sound of the air conditioning often remains the dominant sound. Behind closed doors here at the O2, a very strange environment to watch the winners of the past 2 Grand Slams. It is 3-2 Nadal on serve in the opening set against Thiem, French Open champion against US Open champion. Nadal won 6 of the first 7 points, but with Thiem able to recover from love 30 in his opening service game, there really is nothing between them. Both could qualify for the semi-finals today. Nadal will go through whatever the result of the evening match if he can beat Thiem in straight sets.
Lead the fight against racism in the sport. He initiated the Black Lives Matter protests at races. He's also established a commission to improve the representation of black people in motorsport.
I tried to speak about it in the past, but it was always, there was always a bit of pushback, and it wasn't the easiest thing to speak about. But I think, particularly this year with the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been an awakening and an opportunity to use your voice. And I felt such a responsibility to all the young kids, particularly the black and the minorities out there that potentially feel they don't have a voice. I was like, I've got to use this platform to help encourage.
Hamilton was speaking to CBS. The family of 1966 World Cup winner Nobby Stiles says football needs to address the scandal of dementia and has criticised the PFA's lack of support for players. Former England and Manchester United midfielder died earlier this month after suffering with dementia and prostate cancer. Stiles was the 5th member of England's World Cup winning squad to have been diagnosed with dementia. His family say there is need for urgent action. In a statement, the FA, though, say they have a clear and unwavering commitment to support robust and thorough research into dementia going forward. The Culture Secretary has described conversations with football's governing bodies over getting fans back into stadiums as constructive. Oliver Dowden says he wants to work with football to make progress on important issues for the game's long term. The England and Wales Cricket Board are exploring the possibility of touring Pakistan next autumn. That's after choosing not to visit early next year. The ECB had been in talks over a limited overs tour in 2021. However, they've decided against it due to concerns over the strength of the team they could field. Meanwhile, England women's captain Heather Knight made an unbeaten 58 from 32 balls earlier to help Sydney Thunder to an 8-wicket win over Melbourne Renegades in the Women's Big Bash League.
Today was a really important game, trying to get back on the board. We've had a bit of a bad run, so yeah, to do it in that style shows real character from the girls. Still think there's a lot of things we can improve on, and that's really good signs, obviously going into a really important week and trying to make that top 4 spots.
And in rugby union, France have been awarded a 28-0 victory following the COVID outbreak among the Fiji squad that caused Sunday's Autumn Nations Cup match to be cancelled. France will play their 2 home matches in the next year's Six Nations, meanwhile, behind closed doors because of the pandemic. France are due to host Scotland on February the 28th and Wales at Paris' Stade de France later on. That's the latest from BBC Sport.
BBC 5 Live.
Laura Whitmore.
Hi, this is Kylie Minogue, and you're listening to Laura Whitmore on BBC 5 Live. I'm pretty sure I thought this is what I want to do, or just at least, fantasized about it. But the first concert I went to was Culture Club, and I went with all the ribbons in my hair, my 14-year-old version of Boy George. My kind of disco dream, or my dream of singing, was in my head and in my heart.
Laura Whitmore. Listen now with the BBC Sounds app. First for news and the best live sport. This is BBC 5 Live. Nahal Arthanaika.
I'm here with Irvine Welsh, who alongside Alan Warner and John King have put together this book called The Seal Club, 3 novellas you should go check out. Great read. Matt in Milton Keynes said, what a very insightful and charming man Irvine is. He has his finger well on the pulse of what is happening right now, and I totally agree with his observations about our increased polarised society and how dangerous it is. Great work. Ken has said, hi Irvine Welsh on the Hull Show. What a highlight on a strict day. My wife was asking me last night about Christmas presents, so I now have The Providers at the top of the list. Can you ask him if he sees Dead Men's Trousers as being the perfect Train Spotting 3, just like porno became Train Spotting 2?
Yeah, I can, yeah. I think, yeah, it wasn't kind of written in that way, but in some ways it sort of grew out of the movie, because I was writing that book, we were working on the movie, basically just in an apartment in the Royal Mile. It was myself and Andrew MacDonald and Danny Boyle and John Hodge, going through old scripts we'd done and going through the book of porno and trying to think about how this could be made contemporary with the actors being older. But I think, yeah, it probably would work, but I don't know if we want to put ourselves through doing another film again. it was great fun, but it does take a lot out of you, and I think we've done really two really good ones, and nobody really remembers The Godfather 3, so we're a bit scared, I think, of doing the third one.
Good point, well made. What's been the most memorable night of your life?
I don't know. There've been quite a few. I think.
Give me the top 3.
Paradoxically, memorable nights. If they were that good, you wouldn't be able to remember them. So there's been quite a few. There's been quite a few like that. So, but yeah, I can think of a few. It's in terms of nights out. I've been into most of the clubs in Britain, the big clubs in Britain. I've been to Ibiza, kind of Bergamo and Berlin, and I've been in some great company, and I've DJed in some great places, and I've been very, very lucky to have some great nights out down the years. So long may it continue. I'm getting a bit old to throw an all-nighter now, but I've still got a couple of hours in me on the dance floor. What I tend to do is I tend to wait until all the youth are getting tired, and then a bunch of us will jump on the dance floor with a couple of hours to go, and they'll think, God, these old punters are brilliant. They're just going for it still, But we've only been doing that for a couple of hours. We've just been sitting, kind of chatting, and chill out zone the rest of the time.
Are there some countries that are more open to accepting a range of ages on the dance floor than others?
I think Britain is one of the ones that is, strangely enough. I mean, it's like you go, I've gone to parties and clubs and raves, and there's been 3 generations of raver now from the same family going out together. It's such a bizarre thing that something that started with such an underground culture has now become so mainstream and so much a part of everyday life that we don't even think about it. I mean, that's why I'm really distressed in what's happened to the nighttime economy during COVID. That all the bars and the nightclubs and the live bands and the DJs. I mean, so many of my friends who are DJs, and I mean, I'm lucky. I've got something else too. I've got a job that actually gets easier with lockdown. But most of my friends who are DJs or musicians, they're having it quite tough because they're not, psychologically, they're not really, they don't have anything to do. Their whole sort of raison d'etre is to get out there and perform or to get out there and play records. So it's a tough time for them.
Where does thrill seeking come from now?
I think nowadays it's, it sounds a bit kind of boring, but it sounds like a thing that somebody that's getting older would say. But you take pleasure in many divergent things now. I mean, it's like I still do like nights out, and I still like going to clubs, and a bunch of us had a kind of bit of a clandestine sort of night out the other day there, which was absolutely the weekend, which was absolutely fabulous. But now it's like, as much as I like doing that occasionally, and going to the pub occasionally, or going to football. Keeps the weight off, because you're sitting down at a desk all day. You need to do something else, So I do that. I'll go for running. I don't really like running. I find it a bit. It's it's a bit hard on the joints, and I'm not kind of as fast as I used to be. But at least it kind of keeps you ticking over. And yeah.
Is the boxing good for expending aggression? Frustration.
Yeah, it is. It's great. You can punch a lot of sort of aggression out, and you get rid of a lot of aggression. But I find boxing very zen. I find that the thing that I love about it is the opposite of writing in some ways, because with writing, your mind on spools all over the world, whereas with boxing, you've got to be present in the moment. I mean, even if you're doing some light sparring, you're going to get tagged by the person that's in front of you if you're not concentrating 100% on what you're doing. So it pulls your mind right back into a kind of central place again, and it's a great complement to writing for me. It's a great decompression, and also again, you're moving around, and you're sort of. You're on your feet. You're not kind of hunched at a desk, hunched over a computer, which is a very, very good thing to have as a counterbalance.
Are you comfortable with solitude if it's not writing related? Because it seems as though you are an incredibly gregarious man. You like to be around people, to feel that energy by people, but of course that is not the experience of work.
No, I mean, it's a strange thing because it's very, very dichotomous. It's like, I think you have to be a little bit, well, you can either say schizophrenic or integrated depending on your sense of it. But I think when you're a writer, I'm the kind of writer who have to be quite immersive, so I have to be out there and sort of seeing things and talking to people. And I don't have I have a moleskin notebook in my pocket where I'm jotting down things. I just tend to absorb things and be more of a kind of participant observer, join in and and then get a sense of it from there. But you've also got to be able to like your own company as well. I mean, I've taught on kind of writing courses at various universities, and one of the first things I always say to students is, make sure you like spending time alone, because there's so many great people, so many people that are really clever and talented, and they can sit on a bar stool and tell you about the novel they're going to write or the screenplay that they're going to write and how good it's going to be, and they talk a really good fight. But to actually sit down and spend time with themselves, kind of putting this down on paper, they go crazy. They can't do it for more than a few minutes. So you've got to know yourself. You've got to be able to do both things. You've got to be these two people really. You've got to be the kind of the gregarious kind of outgoing person, and you've got to be the recluse. So. I'm quite comfortable about doing both things. I can't do them both for very long, but I can do. I've optimised my kind of time where I can do them. Where I can do them enough to make them enjoyable. When they start to get unenjoyable, when I start to think, I've been in this room for too long with people that don't exist, I'm going crazy. I have to start getting out and kind of seeing people and disturbing their life, dragging them to the pub. Or if I'm doing too much of that, I've got to get away. I've got to get back into my little room with my imaginary pals again. So it is a nice balance, basically.
What's the root, do you think, Irvin, of your wish not to be tied down into what is an orthodox idea of domesticity?
I think it's really something that I've always striven for. I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to make stuff, to create stuff, whether it was music or art. I wanted to express myself in some way, and I think when you kind of feel that that's what you've got to do. To reconcile that with a kind of a 9-to-5 domestic life, because you're not operating in that way. So you kind of, when you get together with someone in a romantic scenario, it has to be someone who either understands that world and is really into it, or is just very, very empathetic and can sort of can put up with it. And usually people can put up with it for a few years, and then it starts to wear them down. They start to think, 1 minute this guy's all over me and he's sort of treating me like a princess. The next thing he's ignoring me. He's off into this room in his own world and stuff like that. So that's quite difficult for people to come to grips with, because if somebody seems to be withdrawing from them, it's a natural thing to blame yourself in some ways, or when you're fed up doing that, you blame the other person. You think that this is not a kind of a normal person, the kind of person I should be with, and probably it isn't in a lot of ways. But it's just the way I am, and I've reconciled myself to that fact, and I'm quite happy. Kind of being like that, and I don't really do kind of compromise particularly well.
Which doesn't work well in relationships, does it?
It's not.
It does not. It's an interesting thing, because having interviewed as many music artists, I always wonder whether you're honest and you'll say to someone before they really fall in love with you that you'll never be able to love them as much as you love the music you make. Right? Similarly, can you be honest enough to say, or would you be, because this might not be true, that I'm never going to love you as much as I love writing?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I love more than writing is women and being in a relationship with one. So
okay.
That doesn't really kind of.
So it doesn't get in the way.
It doesn't get in the way, but you still have to do. You have to do. It's the management of time, basically, and the management of other people. That if you're in a relationship with someone, they have lives too. They've got full lives, and that's when it becomes kind of difficult. But you can't just. I mean, if I had a giant fridge, I could just stick them in the fridge for a bit, deep freeze them, and then bring them back out to kind of.
Well, it's called cryogenics, but I think it's fairly experimental cryogenics. So I wouldn't go there.
but yeah, I mean, but it's not something you can do. It's like you have to respect that people have a full and interesting, or most people have a full and interesting and dynamic life. And to the big challenge of relationships these days, it's a generic challenge that everybody faces. It's how do you reconcile these things? And again, it's one of the things about, I think, getting older. You appreciate it more, and you do work harder. You do make these compromises more readily and more easily.
What fascinates you about human interaction? Because you're so brilliant at doing it on a page. Reader Providers, I thought, was just superb at the way the subtleties of human interaction.
I think that the great thing is that people can, when they get together, it is the most wonderful thing. It's the most beautiful thing. Kind of romance is the most beautiful thing. Friendship's the most fantastic thing. We really find ourselves in other people, and we also the thing is, it's almost like you believe that we're suited for small scale life in some ways, small scale village life where we know each other and we can look after each other. When we live in big cities, it does become very sort of alienating, and it's harder for us to empathise, and it's easier for us to get into kind of silly conflicts and wars with people about things that we don't actually, we don't remember the genesis of them. And in many cases, it's about sort of trying to find some compelling drama in life. Most of our rivalries are about us acting out, trying to find some drama, trying to eat some drama out of life, So I think that's all the drama, all the culture, everything is everything we have, all the politics, all the art comes from human interaction.
Have you ever doubted your own talent?
I don't really see it in terms of. I think the talent to me has always been quite irrelevant. It's not kind of. I mean, obviously, I've accepted that I have some talent for writing and creativity, but it's something that I would do this anyway. And I think your talent comes from your immersion in it. If you really want to do something, and you constantly do it, I think you get good at it. And the talent that you have, and I think everybody has innate talents, that tends to come out if it's like I don't know which footballer says, but said that the more I practice, the more talented I become. But I think you do have mostly it's about work. It's basically about enjoying the work, not really seeing the work as work, seeing it more as play, and then you start to express yourself. And once you get into that frame of mind.
Irvin, we're running out of time. I'm interested to know, are you patriotic?
No, not really, not at all. I've never sort of. I suppose I'm proud of kind of where I come from, like the community I come from, and I'm proud of sort of being from Leith and North Edinburgh. I'm proud of kind of coming from Muirhouse and Bilton and Leith, and I'm proud of all my friends there and my kind of local football club and all that, and that gives me my sense of identity. I don't have any broader nationalistic thing going on. I don't have any kind of patriotism towards Scotland or Britain or Europe or whatever. I just I see these things as false constructs. I see all nation states as false constructs, really. And but I mean, the products of the era we live in, the imperialist, industrialization era, conquest and all that kind of stuff. And I'll yearn for the day when there are absolutely no borders at all, and people just come and go anywhere they want. But as long as we have this, the economic inequities throughout the world, it's going to, you're never going to get a situation whereby you don't have kind of borders and nation states. So hopefully that's the thing that we can start addressing, is all these global inequities.
And lastly, have you started to think about what you want to be doing and where you want to be on New Year's Eve? I don't know. I mean, it depends on circumstance. I would hope that would be somewhere where
people could gather and have fun. I mean, even if it's only a small bunch of people, I do want to be around friends having fun. I don't really care where that is, whether it's in Miami or Edinburgh or London or Barcelona or anywhere that I can think of. It's just that's the thing that would kind of make me feel really good.
On the turntables?
I've really enjoyed this year. Sorry?
On the turntables? Behind the decks?
Yeah, on the turntables would be good. Not for too long. Maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most, and then I can just join in the party full scale ahead and have somebody else on the turntables.
Yeah.
Get the guys who need to be here, who are doing it all the time. Get Darren Emerson and Appleby, people like that on the turntables.
That would be a good set. That would be a very good set back to back with those two. Irvin, thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
What a pleasure. Take care. The Seal Club is the name of the book. Alan Warner, Irvin Welsh and John King. 3 novellas for you to get your teeth into over the festive season. Now, I'll tell Irvin, the nurse he mentioned was from South Dakota. On Twitter, her name is Jodie Doering, Doering. Her testimony is both blisteringly honest and so tremendously sad. Tell your listeners about her too. Irvin Welsh's speech, so much sense, is very calming to listen to, says Ivan, who's listening. Now, in the last hour, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has said that some parts of the country will be placed under the toughest coronavirus restrictions. Let's hear what she told members of the Scottish Parliament.
19 council areas, the majority will see no change to their levels this week. I am pleased to say that from the start of next week, assuming of course no significant deterioration in the situation before then, 2 areas will move down from level 3 to level 2. However, 11 local authorities will from 6 p.m. on Friday, for a strictly limited period, move from level 3 to level 4. I will set out the details of all of these decisions in a moment. However, I am acutely aware that for many individuals and businesses, these decisions will be both disappointing and distressing. They demand more sacrifice from all of us.
Our Scotland reporter is James Shaw. James, good afternoon.
Hi there.
So which areas will be affected by this and how long are the restrictions going to last, James?
Yes, well, the areas that are really going to feel this, Nihal, going from level 3 into level 4, so the strictest possible controls under the system in Scotland, close to a full lockdown. 11 areas, and they are Glasgow, Renfrewshire, East Renfrewshire, East Dunbartonshire, West Dunbartonshire, North Lanarkshire, South Lanarkshire, East Ayrshire, South Ayrshire, Stirling and West Lothian. And for people who don't have the tightest grip on Scottish geography, that is a big area of land in the south and the west of Scotland, not stretching as far as Edinburgh over on the east, but a huge area of land. And this takes in a population of around about 2,280,000 people across that urban area in the central belt of Scotland. How long will it last? Well, Nicola Sturgeon said as things stand, it will continue for 3 weeks under level 4. Those 3 weeks under level 4, those 11 council areas, so that is up until December the 11th. And one other important thing for people to bear in mind, Nihar, in those areas is that travel restrictions will have the force of law from this Friday. So in other words, you will be breaking the law if you travel into or out of the highest risk areas if your travel
highest in the Scottish system. It means that non-essential shops, pubs, restaurants, hairdressers and gyms will all close. Schools will remain open. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said action needed to be taken as infection rates remained stubbornly high going into the winter.
Pressure on hospitals in these areas and on those who work in them is already severe, and with the additional pressure that the coming weeks may bring, it could easily become intolerable. And further, at these levels, we would not have the flexibility we need to ease restrictions over Christmas, which, in common with the other UK nations, we so desperately want to do.
The government's reviewing the system of regional tiers in England to decide exactly what rules should be in place when the current lockdown ends on the 2nd of December. A final decision won't be made until the end of this month. Boris Johnson's spokesman insists the Prime Minister has always fully supported devolution. In response to reports, he branded it a disaster. The Scottish Conservatives have sought to distance themselves from Mr Johnson, while the Scottish Labour Party accused him of being the biggest threat to the UK. Kirsten Oswald is the SNP's deputy leader in Westminster.
This is something that we hear all the time about Boris Johnson. Oh, he didn't mean to say that. He meant to say something different, as various ministers are sent out to apologise for him. But he did mean that. That is what he thinks about devolution.
Boris Johnson's tested negative for COVID-19 after attending a meeting with a Conservative MP who contracted the virus. Mr Johnson will continue to isolate according to government guidance. Figures show there have been almost 71,000 excess deaths in the UK in the months since the pandemic began. Excess deaths are the difference between those seen this year and the normal 5-year average. The Office for National Statistics said most had occurred during the first wave. Athletes competing in next year's rescheduled Tokyo Olympics won't be forced to have the coronavirus vaccine before they travel to Japan. The head of the International Olympic Committee has expressed full confidence that the Games will go ahead next summer, in part because of the breakthroughs in COVID vaccines. From Tokyo, Rupert Winkle-Hayes reports.
On a tour of Tokyo's new Olympic Village this afternoon, Thomas Bach was asked whether all athletes coming to the Games next year will need to be vaccinated against COVID-19. They would not, he said. It would be a free decision. Forcing athletes to take shots would, he said, be a step too far. However, Mr Bach added that the Olympic Committee would appeal to athletes and others coming to Tokyo to get vaccinated as a show of respect to other competitors and to the host country.
And Dolly Parton's been credited with helping to fund the production of a vaccine, which was yesterday revealed to be almost 95% effective against COVID-19. The country singer donated $1 million towards the research. BBC News at 3 minutes past 3.
The man from Stevenage comes across the line, wins the Turkish Grand Prix and becomes the most successful Formula One driver of all time. Equals Michael Schumacher's World Championship record with 7. He has the most wins, he has the most pole positions, and the British driver is the greatest Formula One driver of all time.
That's for all the kids out there who dream the impossible. You can do it too, man. I believe in you guys. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support.
Don't listen to anybody that tells you you can't achieve something. Dream the impossible and speak it into existence, and you've got to work for it, you've got to chase it, and you've got to never give up and never doubt yourself.
Get reaction and analysis from the Turkish Grand Prix with 5 Live's Checkered Flag podcast. Download and subscribe now.
F1 on 5 Live.
First for news and the best live sport. This is BBC 5 Live. Nahal Arthanaika.
So a big shout out to Hartley87 on Twitter, who said, I liked it when you asked Irving Welsh about a bucket list. He replied, well, I've never been to China, but I've never been to Leicester either. That's true. That's true. I've never been to Machu Picchu, and I've never been to Scunthorpe. So, I don't know. I've got to just weigh these things up and find out which one I should go to first. If anyone wants to suggest popular tourist destinations within Scunthorpe, then feel free to text them in on 85058. One thing I did do before second lockdown was, for the first time, and for denizens of the northeast, they'll be happier with this, I had a chicken parma. Now, if you don't know about chicken parma, producer Nick, who works on the team here, who is from Borough, he told me about chicken parma, and I'm just saying, in culinary terms, it's changed my life. I'm not going to tell you what it is, you'll have to look it up. But wow. Wow. That's all I'm saying. Although after my fig rolls and custard dessert, I know that some people out there don't trust my culinary instincts. So I know. Can you believe it? I bring probably the greatest dessert in the history of desserts to your attention, mixing canned custard with fig rolls, and some people look down their nose at them, as if I'm not the Heston Blumenthal of desserts, which I think I am. But let me tell you now, the chicken parma, oof, that is the one. Okay, we're going to be talking later on about the future of football because, as you know, earlier on we spoke about this football summit that is taking place. We're going to be speaking to Kieran Maguire, who's the author of The Price of Football and is a lecturer at the University of Liverpool, and Lindsay Hooper, who's co-founder of the Offside Rule, which is an all-female football podcast. So we're going to be talking about the financial challenges that football is facing, especially in what are called the lower leagues, and some of those smaller clubs, how they're going to survive. So we'll be talking about that later on in the hour, so stay with us. But now, Nikolai Coster-Waldau. Who? You may be saying, if you haven't watched Game of Thrones. Firstly, why have you not watched Game of Thrones? Anyway, he is best known for his long-running role as Jaime Lannister, who has a relationship with his own sister, Cersei Lannister, which provides children. That's children, that relationship. I mean, it's an unorthodox getting together with people, it has to be said. And anyway, when I sat down with him a few days ago, we talked about the huge success, of course, that series had given him, and the prospects of prequel coming along soon. He also told me about one of his first TV roles. You can find out about that in a minute, but also, most importantly, because I said we got time with him, The Silencing, which is a thriller set in the American wilderness in which he plays an alcoholic animal trapper trying to come to terms with his daughter's disappearance. It actually is a really good thriller. I'm not going to lie, I started watching it thinking, here we go. And then, 45 minutes in, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty good. As I was chomping down on a chicken parmo, looking forward to fig rolls and custard afterwards. Here's a clip of the film.
Think whoever killed her was hunting her for sport?
I wouldn't call it a sport. But yeah. She was hunted.
Breaking news. We're here at a crime scene where a body has been found.
I need to see that girl. She could be my daughter.
Firstly, thank you, because often in my job I have to watch films and listen to music, etc., and it's, an hour of my life I'll never get back, right? Yes. When it's not great. But I really enjoyed The Silencing. Although enjoy is probably not the right word.
No, but that's good.
I was drawn into it. And one thing that I wanted to ask you is I understand to a certain extent how you act a role like Rayburn Swanson. But what I find difficult to understand, and what you did so brilliant in this, is where his grief.
Well, I think it's. I wish I could come with some beautiful, insightful, deep thing, but it really is just you try to put yourself in his shoes and imagine what that must be like. He's an addict, and he's instead of like there's something, his daughter goes missing. I should tell people haven't seen it, but at the beginning of the story you find out his daughter went missing 5 years before the story began, and he's been living on his own since then, and he's drinking a lot, but he was also drinking back then, so I think that was the key. He was an addict who felt sorry for himself, and in the story hopefully something will jolt him out of this very passive existence, if you will. But that was my way in.
Do you take yourself to that place of imagining, because you have daughters yourself, of what it would like?
Well, no, I didn't. Obviously, that's the worst thing you can imagine. And I
exactly.
Obviously, I thought about it, but I didn't. I'm not an actor who. I have my work and my private life. Obviously, I think a lot about my job, but I don't. If I play depressed, I don't walk around constantly in a depression or. It's just it is a job. It's a craft, and you try to use all the tools that you can. But for me, it still is something that I leave when the end of the day. I try to take a break.
Is that quite straightforward for you to do? Other actors find it more difficult. I guess it depends on the levels of immersion.
It absolutely depends on what you're doing, and also depends on. I did a film a few years ago called Shot Caller, which was very, very intense, and I found that it was trickier with that one. But yes, because otherwise, if you can't, then I think you need to seek some kind of help, because then very often it becomes, you almost feel you watch actors work through their own issues instead of the character's issues, if that makes sense. If you constantly have to just use your own raw emotional, and you have to open up your soul every time you do a part, well, it becomes it's a very private thing. And I do believe that you are playing someone else who may look very much like you, but it is, the idea it is someone else.
What about then, he is an alcoholic, he has a drink problem.
Yes.
It's not something that you are unaware of in your own personal life growing up, as you did with your late father. Again, is that something that you just distance yourself from to play this role?
Obviously, you use everything you have, and there was a lot of my dad that I could use obviously, I saw him through the eyes of a son and a child. So the memories of that is different from if you are a grown-up. But I could use that kind of that horrible self-pity, if you will, that at least from my experience, comes with the territory of being an alcoholic, because it's a very shameful thing, and it's a horrible addiction to be trapped in. So yes, obviously use everything you can.
But how do you protect yourself from digging too deep and revealing things that perhaps you should reveal to a therapist and not to...
Well, that's the thing. I never go to therapists. That's my protection. I'm too scared of that. No, but well, there was someone who made a joke, like John Cleese stopped being funny once he started going to therapy, which I thought was very cruel and very wrong, and clearly a joke from a different age. But no, I you protect yourself by, I'm very lucky. I have I have a really strong foundation in my personal life. I'm very blessed to be married to a woman I love, and have a good structure there. And I think that's, like, for everyone, that's really what grounds me.
What is the Danish attitude towards talking about how you feel?
Well, clearly it's
really bad.
Really bad at that. No, I mean, no, I don't know. I mean, I think it's all. I think I'm okay with. No, I don't know. I mean, I think it's not that different from the English in a way, but it's changing. I still think I in that respect I might be older than I look, but I also think it depends on where you come from in life. I have some friends who've had really some quite extraordinary, hardship growing up, and they are the most level-headed people I know, and they don't really get that flustered, if you will. It takes a lot to bring them out of their calmness, if that makes sense. And then I have others where they might have witnessed less, which is really good for them, emotional ups and downs when they were as children, and they can get much more surprised and shocked by what life can throw at you. But then again, these just general observations, and I obviously I'm not a professional, but I do think that clearly we all know this: our childhood shapes us, right? And I think it also teaches us how to deal with emotional issues or challenges, and for better, for worse, I think what we experience as in our first 15 years will very much shapes how we deal with life moving forward. Does that make sense to you? Or,
yeah, well, no, it 100% makes sense. Of course it does. Like you, I've got 2 kids, and our ability to mess up our kids is absolute. Right?
You can really do. Yeah, that's true.
You know, and I'm incredibly conscious of that. Although I don't, and neither do you, I'm sure, beat yourself up on a daily basis about it, because there's also, of course, they need to learn about resilience, and you presumably learnt about resilience at quite a young age.
Well, yes, and also I think that because I've discussed this with my wife quite a bit. Like, I mean, and I know that I'm sure you have the same experience. And my kids, their childhood is so different from mine, and just those basic things of being given personal freedom and responsibility at a young age, we don't really give our kids that any today. I mean, we're much more, worried or feel that we have to, that they can't possibly find their way across town at the age of before they're at least 15 or, you know what I mean? Like, and both me and my wife have been trying to fight the impulse of constantly driving them or taking them, like there's nothing wrong with getting on the tube or in a bus when you're 10, in my opinion, because that's what we did. And there aren't dangerous people out there. I mean, yes, there are, but they've always been there, but there's so few. And I think it's very important to get out and push your kids and then experience life. But it's just it's different today. When you learn to the first time you get on the train, or the first time you do all those things when you're a kid, it gives you so much confidence and it gives you so much power, strength. I believe. Anyway.
Quite often in these interviews, of course, we go through your extraordinary film career and television. Of course, we will talk about Game of Thrones at some moment, but I do want to bring you back to 1999.
the annus horribilis.
Yes, of your acting career. I'm intrigued as to know what this German sausage advert that you shot in South Africa was all about. Well, it's obviously about sausages, German sausages, but why was that so bad for you?
Well, it wasn't so... Well, I wonder why.
You were getting paid. Come on, it's paid work.
No, I'm listening. It was 98. 99 was also bad. 98 was when I at the end of 98, I was living in London, didn't have any money, and then I was still very idealistic when it came to being an actor, and but I also was broke. So I got this opportunity of doing a commercial, and it's shot in Cape Town in South Africa, which was fantastic. I mean, that was really exciting. But then I suddenly found myself stuck on this boat with the angriest American director I've ever met, shooting a sausage commercial. So you have this young man, me, he is on the boat, he's got his feet in 2 buckets of concrete. There's the Godfather gangster in front of him, and it turns out that he's unhappy that I've been dating his daughter, so now he's gonna throw me overboard, and the last wish I have is, can I please have a bite of salami, Reina salami? And he gives me a bite of the salami, which gives me so much power that I can just jump off and swim ashore. The last shore is me, slowly walking ashore with these buckets of concrete, but I'm still smiling because I had my Reina salami. It's a classic. You can find it on YouTube, and then the funny thing is here, I'm shooting here right now. I'm in Iceland actually, and there's a German makeup artist, and we were talking about this for some reason, and he said, "Oh, I remember seeing that," and so it was a massive hit in Germany. That was actually my first big moment in Germany.
But I get. A year before that, you'd managed to kiss Clive Owens, which is not a bad thing, is it?
Yeah, I did. That was very exciting. That was my first film in England, and I'd always wanted to come to England to work, and it was just ridiculously exciting. But yes, I played a love interest of Clive Owens, and the first day of shooting was in Glasgow. It was a movie called Bent. And I remember coming on set, and the first scene was this big end of the earth party, and Mick Jagger was hanging in a trapeze singing "Streets of Berlin." It was set in the 30s in Berlin. It was absolutely magical. And then, yes, I had a beautiful moment with, and I remember he had stubble, which was very painful when you kiss. Yeah.
So you were suffering for your art from the very beginning.
He was first that, and then yeah. It's fun though. It was a lot of fun.
Did your dad ever get to see you act?
He came to. No, he didn't. Yes, he saw. I did a film in Denmark. He saw that. That was my first job. He saw called Night Watch, which was a film that did very well in Denmark. He saw that. He was I think he was very proud. So he did.
That was actually going to be my next question, actually, because just following on from Danish men sharing their emotions and feelings, was he the kind of man that would have told you that he was proud of you?
No. His thing to me was, I'll give you a couple of highlights. When I was 15, he took me aside. He said, "Listen, this thing with the girls, you should always wear a condom, because otherwise you end up like me with all these kids. It's a mess." And then another time he came to see. I was at drama school, and he wanted to it was kind of funny. He wanted to. Well, first of all, he had a hearing aid that he refused to wear it, but then he had to wear it, and then it was always beeping. So throughout the whole performance, you just heard, and I knew it was my dad, like beep, and then someone was trying to whisper, and he would always be like, "Shut up! Just shut up! Don't push me! Beep! Stop!" I mean, it was incredible. And then after, he wanted to kind of thank me in a manly way, so he wanted just to gently give me like a little slap on the face, like "Good job." But I think because he probably had a few, he kind of overdid it, so he almost knocked me out. I mean, I know it doesn't sound funny, but it was funny. I mean, my dad he meant well, but it's always tricky when you've had a few. There was a Christmas once where I had to go to work. I had like a night porter job in a hotel. I was 22 or so, and my parents were divorced. But my sister had her first Christmas in Denmark. It's Christmas Eve. It's a big dinner, right? And she'd invited her in-laws that were these architects. Like they were really like nice people. Like and then our family, and my dad who was very angry about my mum, but he got upset, so he threw it after her, and then I left, and then I called back later to hear how it went, and in the background I could just hear my dad going, "I'm not getting no taxi." It was funny for me, but
was it funny for you? Was it funny for you at the time, or is it funny for you now in retrospect?
In retrospect, it's very funny. At the time, I mean, actually, when he almost knocked me out at drama school, that was funny because, well, it was also embarrassing, but it was kind of funny because it was so like everybody was just shocked, like his dad just punched him. What's going on here? He wasn't that bad, was he? Well, it was pretty bad. So, but no, I mean, in retrospect, yes, it's funny. Yeah. It was kind of funny when I called my sister to hear how the evening was going, and the only thing I heard was my dad screaming in the background. Now I'm saying all these things about my dad. He was a lovely man, and just because I find these stories funny, they might sound horrible, but I do find them quite funny, and he was a very caring and wonderful man. So it's not. I hope it doesn't come across as I'm being disrespectful to my dad.
It comes across that he was a complicated. that's for certain.
No, and the only thing he told me, like apart from the thing about not using a condom, was also like it's a Danish saying. It's basically you don't ever fly higher than your ears will carry.
Yes, I read that he said that, which is interesting. Is there going to be a Game of Thrones prequel?
I think so. I heard there will be. Yes, I think there is.
And you and your involvement?
Well, I've auditioned for everything in it, but I mean, I still haven't got a recall. But I'm trying.
That cannot be true. Why would you have to audition for a show you were in 8 seasons of, and were one of the biggest stars of?
Well, it's not true, obviously, but it's. I thought it was the first.
What are you going to do in it? Are you going to do anything in it?
No. I don't know anything about it, to be honest. I think it's. I have no idea. I think it's. I don't know. That's the answer.
That was very cruel of you, Nicola. Can I just say that's very cruel of you?
I'm sorry.
To lure me in, because exposing my idiocy in such a public way.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What do you know? Do you know anything about, or have you moved on? That's a chapter of your life that is now behind you.
Well, I mean, it's a funny thing because you never move on from anything, do you? I mean, really, do you? Because you always carry whatever you've done in life with you. We always, in some ways, like just in a normal day for any of us, there will be times when we act like as we did when we were 15 and 32, and like we carry out all these. It was almost 10 years, including the pilot. So and you spent a lot of time on that show, and of course with the success it had, you are constantly reminded of that, and that's fine. I absolutely loved my time on that show. So, but yes, you move on to something else. But it's not like I'm suddenly going to go, what show? Oh yes.
I'm over it. Did your relationship with the fans, the hardcore fans, change over the seasons, over those 8 seasons?
No, I got to appreciate. I mean, I've never had that kind of experience of that passionate fans, and I actually was very inspired by it because I started this documentary that we're still shooting, but now of course everything's been shut down for a year because I learned so much about that. The communities that surrounds these shows, but any kind of pop culture they have these fan bases, and it's just it's fascinating, and of course it was interesting to see the reaction to the end of the show because there was a lot of strong opinions about how Game of Thrones ended.
Yes,
and I absolutely understand. Obviously, there's the classic reason that you just didn't like the way it ended, but also that for quite a lot of people, this show meant more than it was just a good show. But it's also they met a lot, had created communities, had these friendships that were built up around watching this show, and suddenly that was ending. So I think a lot of people just didn't want it to end.
Did you accept any of the criticism?
Well, I accept everything, yes. But I mean, it's a strange debate to have because it is what it is. I mean, that they wrote and they made the show they wanted to make, Dan and David, and there is no alternative version of that show. I mean, that was it. I mean, you could like it or you might not like it, but any opinion is fair. It's like you watch any film, do you like it or don't? I mean, I accept everything.
Good. How Scandinavian of you, may I say?
Well. There's also like it's not real, It's like it's just the television show, so it's like it's absolutely okay not to like the ending. I mean, there's so many things I don't like, so I get it.
Well, I like the silence, and could you tell me how Rayburn Swanson, the character that you play, ranks in your own idea of the kind of favourite characters you've played?
Oh, I don't know. It's like, which of your children do you love the most? No, I don't know.
For me, the youngest, clearly.
We had a great time and working on that film, and I really enjoyed it. And it's a small budget film, and I read the script, and it was on the blacklist, which is this list of great unproduced screenplays in Hollywood, and we got that script, and we found a great young Belgian director, and then we did it. And then to find that it's really found an audience, which we're so grateful for. So yeah, it's one of those wonderful surprises. It was fun to do.
Nikolai Coster-Waldau, aka of course Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones. Now the silence in the movie that he's in now is available to stream online, so go cop that, as people used to say. Right, coming up we're going to be talking about the future of football, but now the news headlines at 31 minutes past 3 with Anna Hodges.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Scotland's toughest COVID restrictions will be introduced in 11 council areas, including Glasgow, from 6 p.m. on Friday. The Level 4 rules will mean non-essential shops, pubs, restaurants and gyms have to close and will affect around 2 million people living across West and Central Scotland. Meanwhile, in England, the government's reviewing the system of regional tiers to decide exactly what rules should be in place when the current lockdown ends on the 2nd of December. A final decision won't be made until the end of this month. Boris Johnson's tested negative for COVID-19 after attending a meeting with a Conservative MP who contracted the virus. The Prime Minister will continue to self-isolate, though, according to government guidance. And the funeral's taken place in Lancashire of the entertainer Bobby Ball, who died last month after testing positive for coronavirus. Mourners, including his comedy partner Tommy Cannon, wore his trademark red braces. Now with the sport, here's Delith Lloyd.
Great match this afternoon at the ATP Tour Finals in London, and there's not much between Rafa Nadal and Dominic Thiem at the moment, Russell Fuller.
No, it could not have been tighter, that first set, which has been won by Dominic Thiem on a tie-break by 9 points to 7 on his first set point, with a blistering forehand winner, having saved a couple of set points and fought back from 2-5 down in the breaker. Lots of service points dropped in that tie-break, but not in the set before it. No break points. Each player won 34 points, taking us into the tie-break, which is the fourth one in a row Thiem has won against Nadal, having won all three they've played in this year's Australian Open quarter-final.
You can watch the match on BBC Two from 2 o'clock. In fact, it's currently on now on BBC Two. Yes, 5 Live Sports Extra, though, has commentary of the defending champion Stefanos Tsitsipas against Andrei Rublev. That's from 8 this evening. Russell will lead your team there. Lewis Hamilton says he feels a responsibility to speak out about racism and inequality after little has changed in his time within F1. Hamilton is the most decorated driver in F1 history, but says that doesn't mean anything unless he continues to lead the fight against racism within the sport.
We were always the only black family on the scene, and honestly I thought that us being there, by the time I got to Formula 1, I thought me just being there would break down barriers, would open up doors and encourage it to be a more diverse sport. But I realized last year, after 14 years, that has barely shifted.
Hamilton was speaking to CBS. The Culture Secretary has described conversations with football's governing bodies over getting fans back into stadiums as constructive. Oliver Dowden says he wants to work with football to make progress on important issues for the game's long-term future. We'll have more on this with Nihal in the next few minutes. Manchester United's Lauren James has been called up to the England women's squad for the first time ahead of the Lionesses training camp at the end of November. Head coach Phil Neville has named a 29-player extended squad, which also includes a return for Manchester City's Laura Coombs. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland's captain Stephen Davis will miss Wednesday's Nations League tie against Romania for personal reasons. England's proposed tour of Pakistan in early 2021 will not take place. Talks over a short limited overs tour were announced by the ECB last month, but it's understood the main reason for the tour not happening is the strength of the team England could field, with potential series against Sri Lanka and India also set for the new year. And also in cricket, this week's series in La Manga between Ireland and Scotland women has been cancelled. It's after Scotland withdrew due to concerns over the coronavirus pandemic. That's the latest from BBC Sport.
Available now on BBC Sounds.
Welcome to The Players, the podcast that flips the script on how we talk football.
I know in my mind, and I'm very clear what do I have to do.
I've experienced a lot of stuff that no one should ever experience.
I'm passing the mic to those who know it best, the players themselves.
We are expected to win. Our federation, our country expects that from us.
What really goes on and off the pitch.
Why did I put the Cowboys on?
I'm Beck Smith, and this is The Players. Subscribe on BBC Sounds.
Across the UK,
This is BBC 5 Live. Nahal Arthanaika.
Oh, he's not in his happy place of Turf Moor. He's here in Salford. His name's Tony.
Did you want to see? I don't know if you saw last night, but hang on, my headphones are. Hello, that's better.
I do. Tony Livesey, hello.
Hello. I'm a celebrity last night. Yeah, Jordan North was on my old. I do like to. Victoria Derbyshire's trying to claim him, but he was officially my meter and greeter, T-boy, whatever you call it. He worked on the Late Show when I was on. He's a lovely, lovely lad. Big Burnley fan. I see him before the game a lot. And one thing. Anyway, last night, and I'm a celebrity. He just, in order to get through the snake trial, Shane Ritchie suggested that he went to a happy place. So he was trying to pass a combination on for a safe. And he'd be saying, 35 right, happy place, Turf Moor. 42 left, happy place, Turf Moor.